Morning, all. So, hello and welcome to the Festival of the Pineapples, live judging of the Pineapples Awards for Place, an awards programme that seeks to recognise built environment projects and initiatives that make positive social impact on a wider place and its people. This is the judging category for public space. My name is Natasha McIntyre Hall. I'm the head of regeneration, Big Leads Advisory, and I am your chair for this category. For over 2 decades, I've dedicated my career to fostering equitable places. I've led numerous multi-billion-pound place transformations driven by the unwavering belief that an individual's birthplace should not dictate their life opportunities. My current focus lies at the crossroads of purpose-led design, AI governance, and the firm conviction that true places are defined by their community and not just the buildings. This category seeks to recognise landscape or public space projects, small or large, that can make a massive contribution to the life of a wider place and a positive social and environmental impact. Huge thanks to Vestra for sponsoring this category. For over 72 years, Vestra, a Norwegian family-owned company, has designed and manufactured urban furniture. Their core philosophy is to bring people and communities together by creating social, colourful and sustainable places. We have some great finalists to share with you, and I'll give you a quick reminder of the rules. Each presenter has 10 minutes to pitch to the judges, who then have 10 minutes to ask questions. After hearing all the presentations, the judges will deliberate in private to decide on the winner. The winners will be announced at an awards party on the 22nd of April in Trinity Buoy Wharf in London. Tickets to the party are now on sale at thepineapples.co.uk. A selection of the finalists will also be invited to present their project on stage at this summer's Festival of Place, which is on the 10th of June at Box Park, Wembley, London. Passes to the festival are on sale now. Please feel free to use the emoji buttons to cheer on our presenters today and share your comments in the chat. The judges will be the only ones who can actually ask questions today. If you want to make the presentation slides bigger, you can enable full screen mode. You'll see a pop-out button towards the top right of your viewing window. So, time to meet the judges for this category. Please welcome Dr. Bridget Snaith from the School of Architecture and Landscape at Sheffield University. Bridget is a landscape architect with 30 years experience in a community-centred landscape design and co-design. She's now a full-time academic at the University of Sheffield, and her research focuses on equity and social justice in the design and management of green spaces, and the role that designers and other placemakers can play in tackling cultural inequality. She was part of the team at the University of Sheffield that authored Included Outside publication series for Natural England in 2022, and she's currently working with colleagues on the further publication in the series to be released early in 2026. Dr. Sarah Ali is the president-elect of the Landscape Institute and landscape architect and team leader in landscape design and conservation for the City of Bradford Metropolitan District Council. Sarah is leading the way by creating environments that promote greener, healthier, more prosperous communities and making unique contribution to improving the environment by supporting social, cultural, environmental, heritage, natural conservation and climate action projects through community collaboration across the district. She is also the Environment Agency appointed independent member at the Yorkshire Regional Flood and Coastal Committee. And David West, who's a founding director at Studio Egret West. David has nearly 30 years of experience in urban vision, strategic framework, and site-specific place interventions. He has overseen many of Studio Egret West's award-winning projects, bringing a well-considered and innovative approach to numerous complex sites across the UK and abroad, ranging from large-scale urban regeneration developments to edges of centre communities, both old and new. Places that David has helped shape include Earls Court, Smithfield, East Wickham, Sweetwater, New Bermondsey, Lewisham Shopping Centre, the Old Vinyl Factory in London, Mayfield and Holt Town in Manchester, Digbeth and Arden Cross in Birmingham, South Bank in Bratislava, and that's apparently just to name a few. Now it's time to hear from our first project. A reminder that the presenters even will have 10 minutes to make their pitch, followed by a 10-minute question and answer. So first up is Sloane Street transformation for the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea for Cadogan with the Royal Borough of Kensington. John McCaslin and Partners, and Andy Sturgeon Design. This is going to be presented by Caroline Jenkins, who's the Marketing and Communications Director, and Sarah Hirons, who is Head of Place at Cadogan.
Good morning. Hello, can everyone hear us? Okay, just checking.
Yep, go for it.
Yep, excellent, thank you. Oh. Sorry, just checking a couple of technical things. Right, here we go. So we wanted to begin by outlining the vision and ambition for this project. So in early 2025, Sloane Street marked the completion of its most significant streetscape improvements in almost 250 years, a £46 million investment to create a 1 kilometre green boulevard. This was driven by a need to respect the street's standing and heritage while responding to contemporary challenges, creating a more welcoming, inclusive public realm that addresses pressing needs around climate resilience, cleaner air, better accessibility, public safety, and social connection. The aim was to transform Sloane Street from a corridor people pass through into a place where people want to dwell, connect, and return, a civic boulevard that feels both global and local. Sloane Street sits at the heart of Chelsea. It's a 1 kilometre stretch connecting Sloane Square, which you can see at the bottom of the map there, to Knightsbridge at the north. It's a global street at the heart of a historic local neighbourhood and has always been recognised as one of the world's leading luxury destinations. But while it was home to some of the top luxury brands, it was dominated by traffic with narrow pavements that saw high pedestrian footfall but low dwell time, and a mix of architectural styles, spotty lighting, and cluttered street furniture that didn't reflect its incredible heritage or contribute to the community that surrounded it. At the centre of the street sit beautiful private gardens, and again, you can see them on the map there on the right-hand side of the street. Our desire was to bring these out and extend them the length of the street for the benefit of the wider community, while creating an improved streetscape that encouraged dwell time and connection, better supporting daily life in Chelsea and for those who live and work nearby, while reinforcing the street's role as a world-class destination. Cadogan led the transformation with a clear governance structure, working closely with local authorities, designers, engineers, and sustainability consultants. It was delivered by the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea, and we appointed architects John McCaslin and Partners and multiple Gold Chelsea Flower Show winner Andy Sturgeon on landscape and greening. The project was shaped by over a decade of planning and public consultation. Community consultation played a vital role throughout, with residents, retailers, and local stakeholders engaged at multiple stages, including an initial consultation in 2017 that reached 12,000 local residents and businesses, followed by a series of public exhibitions and stakeholder meetings. Following concerns, extensive traffic modelling ensured pedestrian improvements wouldn't compromise wider movement networks. Sustainability was embedded throughout delivery. UK-sourced stone on all of the paving reduced embodied carbon, drought-resistant planting supports long-term resilience, and energy-efficient LED lighting improves safety while reducing energy use. A long-term stewardship and maintenance strategy has also been established to ensure that this initial investment continues its success for generations to come.
Through this project, we've reshaped Sloane Street into a place that truly prioritises people, guided by 3 core themes, which you can see on the left: space, nature, and craftsmanship. The most visible change you see on the street is how the space has been rebalanced. The pavements have been widened by 23%, crossings increased, and traffic calmed, making the street safer and far more comfortable for pedestrians of all ages. Nature also plays a central role. Over 100 new trees and layered climate-resilient planting now define the street, creating seasonal colour and softening what was once a hard-edged urban environment. This has dramatically improved biodiversity whilst creating a calmer, more welcoming experience throughout the year. Craftsmanship also underpins every detail. High-quality York stone paving, bespoke granite planters that double as seating and lighting, inspired by Holy Trinity Church, which sits on the street, ensures that the design feels timeless and rooted in Chelsea's heritage. There's also subtle security interventions integrated, so safety never compromises the beauty on the street. Together, these interventions transform Sloane Street from a corridor people simply move through into a destination where they now choose to walk, pause, meet, spend time and shop. And the master plan. This was built around a simple ambition to create a street that better serves residents, workers and visitors alike. Developed through the extensive modelling Caroline mentioned, design reviews and public consultation, it formed the backbone of all the changes along the kilometre-long stretch of street. It rationalises vehicle movements, improves pedestrian crossings and introduces carefully designed moments for people to rest, meet and engage within the natural environment. This includes the introduction of the granite planters with a seasonal planting scheme by Andy Sturgeon, celebrating the character of the street throughout the year. We also underwent significant under-street improvements, rerouting the majority of the facilities and utilities underground. Every intervention we delivered supports a wider strategy, strengthening the connection between Knightsbridge and Sloane Street, improving accessibility and wayfinding, and creating opportunities for gathering, social life and cultural activation, which we'll come on to. Ultimately, though, the master plan ensures that the experience feels coherent and elegant from end to end, a continuous green boulevard that enriches daily life whilst reinforcing Sloane Street's identity as a world-class destination.
One of the key aims of this project was to contribute towards a greener, healthier environment. We worked with sustainability consultants throughout to ensure this was achieved and that its impact was measurable. Biodiversity and sustainability expert GreenGauge carried out a full ecosystem service assessment on the project's completion, which reported a 17% increase in urban greening factor, resulting from the 105 new trees and significant climate-resistant planting at ground level, and a 175% increase in biodiversity net gain, along with a 51% increase in tree cover, which is forecast to grow significantly as the trees mature, resulting in an immediate 33% air pollution removal, which again is forecast to increase to 300% in 30 years' time. Together, these measures reduce urban heat, improve air quality, support biodiversity, and contribute meaningfully to climate resilience in a dense urban setting. And we just wanted to mention briefly, it's been fantastic to see it inspire the community. We didn't include this in the original award, but we've also collaborated with Louis Vuitton on planting a pocket forest just off Sloane Street with regular volunteers who tend it, and beehives in partnership with Dior, whose staff volunteer every week to inspect and tend to the beehives. On social impact, today Sloane Street functions as a shared civic space, a stage for cultural events and a community gathering place that's safer, calmer and more accessible for all ages. The wider pavements, integrated seating and improved lighting encourage people to meet and spend time on the street, supporting cafes, local businesses and informal social life. Importantly, the street has also become a platform for cultural and community activity. Sloane Street, to name a few of the things, Sloane Street hosted a big egg hunt in April, which saw 20 giant artist-designed eggs, which you can see one of down there with a little boy pointing to it, line the length of the street. And it was also Frieze London's inaugural destination partner in October, hosting Modern Nature, an outdoor sculpture trail that brought contemporary art directly into the public realm and celebrated the street's greening with relevant artworks from Mark Quinn alongside other leading artists. Collaborations with the Saatchi Gallery extended artworks into shop fronts, banners and street furniture. Chelsea in Bloom in May, which extends the flower show out into the local neighbourhood, transformed the street into a free open-air festival involving over 130 local businesses, and the street also hosted its first ever Christmas party, designed as a neighbourhood celebration, not just a retail moment. These initiatives help foster a sense of shared ownership and belonging, reinforcing the street's role as social infrastructure and supporting local businesses and everyday social life.
One of the most fundamental parts of the project for us is also what happens after construction. And part of what we have is a long-term stewardship strategy that protects and enhances everything delivered through the public realm investment and makes sure the standard set is continued into the future. We've developed the Sloane Street Excellence Programme, now entering its second year. Cadogan's commitment to operating the street at an exceptionally international standard and ensuring that private investment delivered through the project continues to deliver greater public benefit. This programme is delivered and built around 5 pillars: environmental management, cultural activation and destination marketing, which helps bring vibrancy to the street throughout the year, as Caroline just took us through, building a vibrant, thriving retailer community and sharing intelligence and insights. Together, these pillars support everything from day-to-day operational excellence to major strategic initiatives that strengthen Sloane Street's global positioning. This is where private investment delivers very real public benefit, ensuring that Sloane Street remains thriving, beautiful and resilient for decades to come. It wasn't an afterthought, it's the mechanism that protects the ambition for the transformation and retains the street feeling exceptional. So in summary, the Sloane Street transformation represents the most significant streetscape investment in more than 250 years, creating an elegant kilometre-long green boulevard that enhances both everyday life and the street's identity as a global leading luxury destination. It demonstrates how even the most established streets can evolve into generous, inclusive public spaces that respond to modern needs around safety, comfort, sustainability and social connection. It honours Chelsea's heritage while strengthening the street's position that is equally rooted in its local community. By amplifying craftsmanship, creativity and environmental performance, the transformation connects the identity of the brands out into the public realm and creates a place where culture, nature and daily life can come together seamlessly, future-proofing the destination for centuries to come. Ultimately, Sloane Street is now a street that feels both global and local, and one that will continue to evolve and thrive for years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. That was great. So the judges are now going to come back on stage and ask some questions. Super. So, Bridget, kicking us off, please. You're on mute.
Yeah, thank you so much for that presentation. That scheme is really transformational. It really has changed the street dramatically, and obviously those changes in biodiversity and all of the other things that you mentioned are really, really valuable. So yeah, it's a great project as reflected in getting to this stage of the competition. I do have some questions. So I just wondered on two fronts. One is around inclusivity for people with visual impairment, particularly, and also older people. And the reason I'm asking those questions is I was interested in the circular planters and whether any visual impaired people had commented on the colour scheme to you and how involved they were in the development of the design. And the second point was around the seating doesn't have backs or arms, which is harder for older people to use. And I wondered if there were any areas where that had been considered. So there's an inclusion question. I think I'll leave it there to let other people have a chance.
Thank you. That's a really good question. So we did an extensive community consultation where we gained views from a variety of different people and different backgrounds. The planters and pots, so the pots we refer to as the round ones, the planters being the sort of more wavy ones, they have been developed to give rest points rather than seating points. So we wanted to make sure that people didn't sleep on them. So they're kind of curved and comfortable for kind of dwell resting points rather than sort of official seating, which you can find just off Sloane Street. So in Sloane Square, there's lots of seating there. So we know that that's within the area. And then within the pots themselves, we haven't had any feedback on that. And actually, that's a really interesting point that you've raised. So thank you very much on that one. Those were developed to be a more kind of visual aesthetic for the street. And they also act as vehicle mitigation devices. So it was important that we created something quite strong and bold for that as well, to be protecting the shop front. So it definitely was considered, and we've sort of interweaved it through as much as we can without taking too much away from the overall scheme itself. I hope that's answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much. Sarah, do you want to go up next?
Thank you. Yeah, great presentation. So can you tell me a little bit more about the stakeholder engagement and how it shaped the design, and also what the feedback has been since you've delivered it? And if you were to change anything, what have you learned and what would you change if you were to do it again?
Excellent. Right, if we start with stakeholder engagement and the process of that stakeholder engagement piece, I think it was a solid 2 years of stakeholder engagement, which began in 2017, and we worked very closely with the local council. As you mentioned, it was that reach out to 12,000 local residents and businesses in the area, but then we had a series of exhibitions that were open at Cadogan Hall, where we really tried to encourage everybody to come in and meet the team and ask questions. And one of the key concerns that kept coming up time and again was about the impact of vehicle movement along the street. And if we were widening the pavement, everybody was for pedestrian improvements, but they were also worried that as a main thoroughfare, I suppose, they didn't want it to affect vehicle movement and cause more congestion. So we had to work really carefully with the local community to mitigate concerns around that. I mean, Sloane Street is an incredibly wide street. It was originally created 250 years ago to allow carriage turning circles, horse and carriage turning circles. So we knew we had some space to play with, and working with John McCaslin, we modelled several traffic scenarios that allowed us to increase the width of the pavement by 23%, while proving that it wouldn't affect the vehicle movement along the street. And then in terms of, what was the second question? I'm sorry, what we do better?
Yeah, I think if there's anything that you learned from this experience, and if you were to do it again, what would you have done differently?
It was an incredibly ambitious scheme, and we knew it was ambitious, but we perhaps hadn't, in hindsight, anticipated the impact of the underground, the street work. So people see the street, they see that it's wider, they see that it looks beautiful, greened, and it looks excellent. But the hard part, as I'm sure all of us can appreciate, is the bit that happens underground. So we were rerouting mains, water, electrical cables. We found a lot that we didn't know was under the street when we were doing it. So coal bunkers lined the street. So it isn't necessarily what we would change, but we might have been able to take a little bit more consideration to that, because that was the challenge of the project.
Thank you so much. David. I think the mute button's just a bit slow. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I love this street. I've been going here for 35 years, and I must admit, hats off. I think you've done a really beautiful job. It's really elevated it, and it feels really fresh. And I absolutely love the circular planters and the way that kind of impacts and creates this much more organic, fluid feeling. Obviously, the elephant in the room is 46 million quid. It's quite a few quid. I think you're being compared today, and it's not your fault. You're going to be compared with people with at least a 46th reduction in cost. And so, one has to ask the question: where did the money go? Is it mostly in the ground? Is it mostly those utilities? Could you sort of just break down how you spent 46 million quid a little bit, please? Just so we get a sense of how creative, how innovative you were within the budget, so that when we're comparing and contrasting with the other amazing projects we're going to see today, we can at least give it a fair go, if you get me.
I think that's a really good question, and it's something that we probably anticipated being asked, because it is and it's still about amount of money to spend. It was spent carefully in a really considered way. The underground utility works that I've mentioned took a very, very sizable proportion of the budget, which you might not, if you were just walking the street, you wouldn't see that. But it was important that while, we don't intend on doing this again for a very, very long time. So if we're doing it, do it once and do it right. So a very large proportion was spent underground that people wouldn't see, but is important to do. And then the other bit was on the other sort of sizable investment is on the quality of the materials used. So the York stone, we worked with, local or European suppliers, for example, as much as possible. We were very specific about the colour thread that went through all of those. So it was about, investing in the quality of materials to be supporting the project. So,
yeah, I think, another point is perhaps that we could have done it more cheaply by, there was stone for the paving, which is one of the largest costs. We looked at Far East and other sources, and it didn't feel right in terms both of environmental footprint and championing kind of local craftsmanship, I suppose. We ended up going to the quarry in York and being very selective about the York stone that we chose for that paving, which is perhaps more expensive than other alternatives, but it felt absolutely right for the next 200 years that we were using the best local materials wherever we could.
Can I jump in at this point? I think looking at the time, we've sort of got just over a minute. So if anyone's got a sort of lightning question to ask, then Bridget, I'll come to you first if you've got something very super quick.
How do you clean it?
We have a very robust, so the Sloane Street Excellence Programme that I mentioned is a multi-million-pound investment that we spend in terms of cleaning, maintenance, security, etc., etc., etc. And we partner with the council to clean it on a very regular basis to make sure that the standard remains looking exceptional.
And although all the planting is as drought resistant as it can be, it also needs watering, certainly to establish the plant. So that's been quite an intensive upfront investment as well.
Sarah, I think we've got time for one more if you've got something super quick. Oh, you're on mute.
Just very quickly, did you consider creating rain gardens, sort of help with that, sort of make, watering at all?
We, within the gardens, so adjacent to Sloane Street is the Culloden Place Gardens, and we don't have rain gardens there, but we do collect a lot of water there that is then used to water the plants on the street.
Thank you so much. That is like bang on time. So thank you so much for your presentation and for answering our questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, oh, it's me all by myself again. Okay, so the next presentation that we've got is for Woolwich Town Centre, and this is from Royal Borough of Greenwich with LDA Design, Studio Weave, Gort Scott, Michael Grubb, ECF and Civic. So this could be a busy presentation here. So this is going to be presented by Canon Ivers, thank you. He's the director for LDA Design, and Emma Sweeney, who's head of regeneration at the Royal Borough of Greenwich. Off you go.
Great, thank you. Just a confirmation you can see the slides, okay?
Yeah, absolutely perfect.
Very wonderful. So Woolwich began as a riverside settlement over 2,000 years ago, but will start in the early 1900s when the Royal Arsenal was thought to be the largest factory in the world, employing over 100,000 people at the peak of World War I. Beresford Gate was the main entrance to the arsenal, so employees entered and exited through Beresford Square. This daily rhythm resulted in a lively place with successful shops and a market. Woolwich has had a market for over 400 years, and the central image and the bottom left images show the historic linear market, which is a key aspect that we have re-established at Beresford Square. After the war, the workforce scaled back to 6,000 key workers. Mass redundancies followed and the arsenal closed in 1967. When the arsenal closed, Beresford Gate, as you can see in the images on the left, was earmarked for demolition to allow Plumstead Road to be widened. The threat of destruction led to the protective listing of the gatehouse, so it was retained when the road was rerouted to its north in 1984, as seen in the images on the left. The severing of the gatehouse from the arsenal resulted in the gatehouse becoming a folly of sorts in Beresford Square. The main image on the right shows Plumstead Road today from the top of the gatehouse and the pedestrian crossing leading directly to the Elizabeth line.
The public realm project sits within the conservation area and is directly opposite the new Elizabeth line station and the Royal Arsenal Riverside community, which on completion will have up to 9,000 homes. Investment included £17 million from the Future of London High Street Fund and 1.8 million from Historic England, with funds matched by Greenwich. The aims of the Future High Street programme was to renew and reshape the town centre and the High Street to help drive growth, improve experience and ensure future sustainability and resilience. The delivery of the projects has promoted growth and investment in the area, with many of the sites shown in pink on the map submitted for planning or now having started on site. This public realm will be crucial to the success of these wider projects, providing important infrastructure for the town centre. Since 2021, we've been working with the local community and stakeholders on the development of the 3 public realm projects shown on this plan. Outreach included 2 public webinars due to COVID and a letter drop to 22,000 residents and businesses. Social media posts reached over 37,000 people and a project website was set up, receiving over 500 comments. We met with accessibility groups, traders and young residents and held 15 individual engagement events, gathering over 1,000 responses. In addition to this, we ran dedicated workshops with the market traders to re-establish the linear market.
The site itself was entirely hard paved with a constant slope that limited the functionality of the square, running from left to right across the square. The gates at the gatehouse were closed, preventing a direct pedestrian link to the Elizabeth line, which now is used by 13 million people annually. We reprofiled the site to make it more usable for the day-to-day and for events by reinstating the historic high pavement on the left of this image, where the linear market sits, and added seating terraces to the east. We reinstated the linear market, and the council delivered the market pavilion in the upper left of this image, and gardens with Studio Weave and Tom Massey. 60% of all the paving was reused on site, and granite blocks from Beresford Square were used on Powis Street and the market pavilion. 58 trees and over 2,000 meters square of planting makes the site 30% greener, with suds absorbing surface water and mitigating local flooding. The design considers evening and nighttime use, with lighting designers Michael Grove's studio, ensuring Beresford Square feels welcoming and safe, and the gatehouse is celebrated with elegant lighting. The work by Gort Scott on the Royal Arsenal Gatehouse has restored the Grade 2 listed structure to its former glory, and the gates are now open for the first time in 25 years. This creates a direct physical and visual connection across Plumstead Road between the Elizabeth line and residential areas to the north, and Beresford Square and the town centre to the south. The square was previously dominated by the market, which limited intuitive movement through the square, any day-to-day use other than the market, and prevented views to the wider context. The overhead lighting that you can see in this image felt imposing and detracted from the protected views to the gatehouse. The completed square opens views to the gatehouse, provides generous seating areas, a central garden, a playful water feature, suds, and elegant lighting. Emma, are you on mute? I'll carry on. The market pavilion and gardens designed by Studio Weave and Tom Massey transformed a poorly designed, underutilized, hard paved area with no seating into a new community space surrounded by nature. The pavilion and gardens have a direct relationship with the gatehouse and Beresford Square, which strengthens and unifies the public realm. The pavilion includes fully accessible public toilets and a new cafe that opens in the spring, which has enabled local business to expand to Woolwich. The new urban garden provides a different emphasis and experience to complement Beresford Square and provides safe and inviting routes to and from the bus stop. 3 existing 19th century drinking troughs have been reused across the public realm, including one in the gardens as seen in the photo above. Moving on to Powis Street now. As the main high street in Woolwich, Powis Street already had a good structure of existing trees and alternating groups on either side of a clear central service route, active frontages, and a flush, predominantly pedestrian street. The layout, furniture, and materials, however, were dated and didn't function well, with excess street clutter, bollards, and underused seating. Powis Street is crucial to the existing economy, to the local economy, providing places to shop and to socialize. Combined with the market at Beresford Square, this is the main shopping hub for the wider area. So the delivery of Powis Street has transformed the 320-meter long street, removed over 200 bollards and other street clutter, retained existing trees, introduced inclusive and varied seating using reclaimed materials from Beresford Square, provides playful social platforms for individuals or groups to share in order to increase the dwell time and to improve the overall atmosphere of the local high street. 250 meters squared of planting at eye level complements the existing trees, and enhanced lighting makes the street feel more welcoming, safe, and attractive. The new paving brightens the street to make it more inviting. Future external food and beverage seating areas have been planned into the design to help the council encourage a varied offer alongside an emerging nighttime economy. And finally, the council developed a shopfront design toolkit with Turner Works to develop a strategy to create a consistent identity and build on the Palace Street revitalization. And to close, the impact of the design and delivery of these projects has significantly elevated the quality of the public realm and local facilities in Woolwich, encouraging dwell time, community cohesion, and civic pride. The projects have been shaped and welcomed by the community with extensive consultation and engagement, celebrates the local history and enhances the heritage of the architecture, introduces 58 trees and over 2,000 meters square of planting, making the site 30% greener with suds to absorb surface water and mitigate local flooding, creates generous and varied seating areas, providing all-inclusive access, and considers intuitive movement, provides a flexible event space and a playful water feature that enables Woolwich to evolve over time. Enhanced lighting makes the space feel safe, welcoming, and celebrates the historic buildings. The re-established linear market has integrated into the redesigned square, and the demand to be a stallholder has already increased. And finally, the square has already hosted a local Christmas market and a parkour event since opening in early 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that presentation. The judges are going to come back on and ask questions. Hopefully you'll be able to join in now, Emma.
Yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi is waving in and out.
Grand. Okay, so David, if you want to go first on question asking this time. Oh, mute.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Thank you very much, Canon and Emma. Was there a 10-slide rule on these competitions? Did you just cheekily just show us loads?
No, 10 slides, David, stuck to the rules.
I love that. That's a very, very cool end. I'm buying time, actually. It was such a clear presentation with such a clear brief. I'm actually not sure I have a question, which is weird.
We can come back to you. Why don't I
come back to me? Yeah, please. I just, for me, it's just great to see, because Woolwich has been so brave for so long, and you know, it's amazing. I was lucky enough to go to the Blue Earth Festival tail end of last year, so I actually walked around and visited this prior to the announcement of your shortlisting and all of that. So I think it's really cool, and it's amazing for London that we get this completely interwoven sequence of space. So congratulations, it's really lovely to see. Right, I'll wait for the question.
Yep, Bridget, you're up.
Okay, great. Thanks, Canon and Emma. Yeah, really good presentation, and really very much enjoyed seeing how you've created public realm that is, you know, thinking about varied abilities, but also is playful and playable so that families can be there. And also, I noted some youth-friendly seating. I think overall, you know, you've hit a lot of the kind of targets that I would want to see in a shopping retail area in the town centre. So yeah, no, really good work, and you know, the suds there and all of that. Long ago in another life, and not entirely, I was working in business improvement districts in London, and I worked in the Lower Marsh Market, and I did notice that you didn't really show us the market now. Like the image, there was one stand I could see, one stall. Market traders have struggled. Street markets can be challenged. And I would wonder if you could comment a little bit on how the traders have received the change, where their vans are going, and also a pale pavement and a market. I'm thinking cleaning again. This is the bids stuff coming out. Like what's going on there? So there's a lot of questions there. Thank you.
So if I can start with a paving one, because it's an easier one to answer, and also to point out, Bridget, that in these images that are flicking through, there are a number that do feature the full extent of the market on the high pavement. So if you keep an eye out for that. So on Beresford Square itself, I mentioned that we retained 60% of the paving. The perimeter of the square we retained as the darker gray granite that was already there. So that meant that the market sat within that existing material, which had been used for a number of years already for the market to be in place. So they understood the cleaning regimes and how it would take some of obviously the staining and the different aspects of being in a market. And then the central square is where we try to brighten up the square, bring in a warmer tone that makes it feel more inviting in response to the tonality of the architecture and the surrounding context. Emma, do you want to mention just how the market is
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's a very popular and fairly successful market, maybe quite unusual for London, but we talk about Woolwich as having a good cash economy, so market is ideal for sitting within Woolwich. I think with lots of established groups, change was difficult, and I don't think that's anything sort of to hide behind, and we continue to work with them regularly. I think this week they've just all got new awnings for their markets to try and draw them visually better together in the new space, but we certainly haven't lost any traders, and the market's growing even today. So I think it's a process, but we're getting there.
Thanks very much. Sarah.
Thank you. A great presentation. And I've been watching the site evolve over the years, and done an amazing piece of work there. So, but how does the design reflect the kind of the different communities and the different businesses and the market that live and work in that neighborhood?
Yeah, I think that's a really valid question. It's a very diverse area, as many will know, which is very diverse. So I think a lot of it was trying to find the flexibility just in how people can use it. We know that some groups prefer to sit together. We know that some prefer to sit in different ways, that the way in which landscape is read from Bridget's work as far as understanding how people respond to seeing planting, for instance, differs as well. So we are certainly trying to make sure that there was a variety across both Powis Street, Beresford Square, and the Market Pavilion that brought that variety, and hopefully using some plants that people will be familiar with from different parts of the world. I think the direct connections that you're probably linking into, most of the consultation was around how do we simply just reshape this to make it function as a place, because it was, as I mentioned, dominated by the previous use of the market square. It didn't really have another life. So our main aim was to make it more than a market square, to effectively allow those different communities to be part of that space, to host events, and have celebrations within the square itself. Emma, anything you want to add?
Just that it's absolutely done that. I think you can see, at different times of the year, obviously when the weather is better, that the fountain really offers a real sort of family feel about it, and then the seating, perhaps people without children tend to gravitate towards those kind of gathering spaces.
Thank you very much. David, I'm going to come back to you. If you've got any questions that you...
Yes, okay. It's not really a heavy question. It's more, you're in a really great category with loads of great submissions. They're all of completely and utterly different scales and budgets. What would be the greater lessons learned, or the greater lessons to share in terms of public space creation that can be learned from this project, or what bar does it set?
Yeah, I think that's a really fantastic question. I think whenever you set out to design something like this, you have certain overall goals and aspirations and aims, but it's often those that surprise you the most that are most interesting. I think in essence, there's always a creative angle to how people use space. So those, I think Bridget, you described them as places for the youth to sit. I think that's been a really great surprise. People have really gravitated to those. They've seen them as playful elements. They've seen them as stages and platforms for people to stand on and gather. So that's been interesting. Desire lines, I think there's always an essence of missing one, and we missed one on here. So I always like to share what we've learned, because we do tons of work to make sure that you're picking up where people want to go and how they want to move through. But you always are learning as well. So I think there's elements there of really, really having a bigger picture understanding of the context where people are walking to, where they're going, to make sure that you're making it intuitive, you're putting footpaths and movement corridors where people want to actually walk, but also you're not losing and disrespecting what you're ultimately putting in the ground as well. Emma, anything from you?
I think that just about covers it. I mean, I was going to say something very boring and practical around sort of thinking about, I guess, the operations of a publicly managed space. Something we've sort of struggled with afterwards is sort of those sightlines of CCTV cameras or dwell spaces that perhaps weren't in the existing area and therefore aren't covered by the existing cameras. Continues to be something that we're reviewing. So absolutely thinking about those things from the outset.
I think one last thing, if time permits, is around collaboration. So we've mentioned that there were effectively 3 different projects as part of this. One led by Studio Weave and Tom Massey, the other by Gord Scott, with Turner Works also leading on the Storefronts. And we also went through the challenges of the contractor going bust halfway through the project and everyone having to come back together. So I think that's a real testament to everyone rowing in the same direction, and also where one project ends and another begins. There were certainly no red lines in this project. Everyone was really collaborating to say, how do we make sure Beresford Square speaks to the gatehouse speaks to the pavilion and the gardens. And hats off to Elite, to other contractors that picked this up and took it through. They did a fantastic job in tough circumstances to finalize and deliver the project.
Grand. We have like a minute left. Bridget, do you have a sort of lightning question that comes to mind immediately?
Yeah, you didn't tell me where they put the vans, and also I thought about where's the compactor.
So we have a market compound that is on a neighbouring site that we've managed to get replaced in the development that's going on that site as well, which I think will remain a challenge because those spaces are, but we have a plan.
Sarah, have you got a very quick question? Okay, if the answer's no.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
David, do you have a super quick question? No? Okay, perfect. In that case, we are now bang on 10 minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well done.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Oh, 3-year-old suddenly looking at me again. Okay, so thank you to everyone for that. The next presentation is the Canal Quarter in Cardiff for Cardiff Council with AtkinsRéalis and Knights Brown. This is presented by Ben Ferguson, who's the Principal Landscape Architect at AtkinsRéalis, and Gethin Shields, who's the Operation Manager in Major Infrastructure Projects for Cardiff Council. Take it away.
Hello, everyone. Can I just check you can hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great stuff. Thank you. Yeah, my name's Gethin and I work for Cardiff Council as an operational manager for major projects. And what we have built and what we have to show you today is the first phase of a much wider and ambitious master plan and redevelopment for a portion of Cardiff city centre. The phase 1 for Church Away Canal, we've uncovered a historic canal and produced a regenerative and new public realm scheme in an area that had really fallen into decline in recent times. From around about the sort of early 2000s, everywhere else it seems in the city centre was redeveloped, and this area really did fall into decline. Low footfall, empty shops. You know, there's a shopping centre there as well, Capital Shopping Centre, which used to be like the focal shopping point for Cardiff city centre, fell into rapid decline with the majority of the shops closed. And it really was a shame. And the council brought forward a master plan to redevelop a whole portion of this area, much wider than what we've got to show you today. And, you know, it's a question sometimes of what comes first. You know, did the developers go first or does the council go first? And in this instance, the council was really brave and they went first. They funded the redevelopment of this scheme fully from its internal budgets, and they provided the vast majority of the funding to construct the scheme as well. So the idea here was to go forward with something that would be a catalyst for that wider redevelopment, a sustainable public realm project that would also take action on things like climate change and provide, you know, new spaces and public space for future generations alike. And also with the hope to bring back business as well and people to a really declined area. And I'll pass you on to Ben now, who's our lead designer, and he'll take you through whilst the scheme is sort of sustainable and a regeneration project, It also has a really interesting historical twist to it as well. And I'll pass you over to Ben, who will take you through those slides now.
Thanks, Gethin. Yeah, as Gethin was saying, the history of this is a really important factor to the project. As the name suggests, the dock feeder canal was constructed to provide water to the docks, which were built in the mid-19th century. Thanks to the docks, the city became the world's foremost exporter of coal and iron during the latter phases of the Industrial Revolution. This significantly boosted the city's economy and its population. However, in 1949, much of the dock feeder was culverted and hidden from view, as you can see in the images in the middle there. But thanks to this project, it was our job to reveal the canal once again and transform this part of Cardiff for the better. Sorry, skipped on too many slides. And that's precisely what we've done, transforming what was a large, uninspiring roadway dominated by vehicles into a multifunctional and multifaceted public space, all delivered for a capital works cost of £5 million. As we've seen in cities like Manchester, where Mancunians have been reunited with the River Medlock and Mayfield Park, this project has reunited Cardiffians with the dock feeder canal, reconnecting people with the city's rich history. The design went through an iterative process between ourselves at Atkins Realis, Cardiff Council, and Cardiff's SUDS approving body, also known as SAB, from 2020 onwards. The project was classified as permitted development, therefore did not need to go through planning. However, it was featured in a number of public consultations and was developed in consultation with a wide range of stakeholders, including local business owners and Natural Resources Wales, to name but a few. The completed design reveals and celebrates a 70-metre stretch of the canal with a generous terrace seating area, 2 footbridges, a stage with a tensile canopy, a waterfall feature, a pergola, architectural lighting, floating wetlands, and a variety of rain gardens planted with trees and biodiverse planting. All of this has been accompanied by a palette of robust materials, as well as innovative recycling opportunities to ensure a lower embodied carbon score. The complexity of this project really came to light during the construction phase, which took place between 2022 and 2024 and was led by Knights Brown. As well as the culvert itself, the construction teams had to work around a complex and constrained urban environment, working with a large array of utilities and the needs to continually provide emergency service access around the site into the city centre. The culvert itself also provided innovative recycling opportunities, with the large concrete beams being used to used as walls for agricultural buildings in the nearby area, boosting the scheme's sustainability credentials, and that's the trio of images just on the left. The result, it's a unique and inclusive public space that contributes positively to urban life. One of our main aims for this space was to create a place that people would be repeatedly drawn to, a place that would encourage relaxation and connection to others. We did this by introducing a variety of spatial typologies that are known to be beneficial for mental well-being, including places of refuge, prospect, and intrigue. The entire design of the scheme was also vetted by an inclusivity and accessibility consultant to ensure that the design was welcoming for all. Intimate pathways, inclusive seating, accessibility for wheelchairs, spots for chance encounters, and places to visually engage with the water all add to the positive feel and inherent attractiveness of the space. The waterfall feature at the northern end of the scheme also provides a tranquil sonic soundscape. Clear lines of sight, CCTV, guard railing, and other safety features were all designed with safety of visitors and maintenance staff in mind. Furthermore, the lighting scheme makes the space feel safe and welcoming during the evening, making the space an active zone at all times of day, which has been of immense value, particularly during the darker times of year, where social and artistic events have made use of the space. Thanks to the inclusion of the stage area, the space has been a perfect setting for musical performances, as well as interactive artistic installations, such as the illuminated Reed Symphony pictures in the bottom left. Furthermore, the Cardiff Kids Christmas Lights project is a notable demonstration of added social value and community engagement. Over the past 2 years, the project, led by Cardiff University and Cardiff Council, was involved with over 200 local primary school children and has taught them about the history of the docks, the canal, and the roles of designers in the built environment. Importantly, it has given the children an opportunity to have their designs turned into illuminated Christmas decorations which were displayed in the Canal Quarter. The lights were subsequently turned on at a special event, an example of which is in the top right, where parents and guardians enjoyed a choir recital and watched the children switch on their designs. As well as providing a place for people, we also wanted to provide a place for nature. Our aim with the planting design was to provide a mix of species that are climate resilient, low maintenance, high in visual impact, and beneficial to wildlife. Existing oak trees in the image just second from the left were also incorporated into a new planting bed. A new pergola was installed with soil cells underneath and climbing plants, including jasmine and wisteria. As well as an increase in pollinators used in the area, the most notable wildlife was spotted has been river otters, pictured at the top left. They've been observed multiple times throughout the years and were first seen very soon after installation of the floating wetlands. A unique site in an urban area, I'm sure you'll agree, and a true demonstration of if you build it, they will come. As well as being a popular spot for people and indeed otters, the space fulfills a very important functional purpose. The SUDS design is underpinned by regenerative design principles and was designed in collaboration with Cardiff's SUDS governing body. As such, it is fully compliant with legislation. All water that passes through the system exits into the canal. The functionality of the design is visually celebrated using prominent outflow spouts placed throughout the scheme, creating temporary water features during rain events. The waterfall feature also recirculates water from the canal, oxygenating the water and adding to the ambiance of the space. Thanks to the SUDS design, on an annual basis, we have prevented 3.9 million litres of water from entering the combined sewer network, equivalent to 26,000 bathtubs. As a result, this saves approximately 4,600 kilowatt hours of energy from being used for sewage pumping and 750 kilograms of CO2 from entering the atmosphere, which is roughly equivalent to 4,000 car miles. All of this has been achieved in an area that is only 0.3 hectares big. By managing surface water in this way, we are positively contributing to Cardiff's high environmental and sustainability targets, whilst managing flood risk and reducing watercourse pollution. With this project, we believe that we have fully delivered on what is known as the triple bottom line for sustainable development, delivering benefits for environmental, social, and economic needs. As a testament to the project's sustainability credentials, we won the ICE Wales Award for Sustainability in 2024. The project was also a finalist for last year's AJ Architecture Awards and the LI Award for Excellence in Place Regeneration, coming runner-up to a worthy winning scheme in Bradford. But now I'm going to hand back to Gethin, who's going to talk about the economic impact of the scheme.
Thanks, Ben. So thanks to the benefits that Ben outlined and the result of the project, we've seen real impactful benefit straight away. Whilst we were on site, we had people coming in to our planning department asking about pre-applications and things for vacant units. We had a new pub open called the Dock Feeder Pub. And since then, we've had another pub open as well, a pub restaurant open as well. And some of the vacant units have filled up, which is great.
Guys, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but we're running out of time. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to really wrap it up and make sure you've told us what we need to know.
Okay. We've also had the Capital Shopping Centre come forward with a plan to regenerate their shopping centre with a new entertainment venue. People have returned, footfall is up. And I think it's really an example of a project that's had a really immediate impact in an area that needed it as well. And we've also started designing the next phases of this project, and there'll be more news to follow on them in the future, hopefully. So thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but
no, it's not fine.
I'm to bring up the judges and ask you some questions. So on the question front, Sarah, you're up first this time.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, great presentation. And I love it when local authorities really kind of are brave and lead and set the kind of benchmark of where they want developers to go and actually take that initiative. So this is a phase one of a bigger kind of strategy. So what is it that you've kind of learned and perfected? What really works, and what will you be taking? Which elements will you be taking? And maybe, you know, how are you going to change some of it into the next phase?
Gethin, maybe that's a question for both of us, but do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So but you do the design elements, Ben, and I'll do the sort of the premise and the backing of the scheme. I think with what we'll take from this is, you know, it is to be brave from the offset and be ambitious. A lot of people told us we couldn't do this. You know, lots of people said that. Is the canal even there? Will the water be brown? You can't do this. They're the sort of messages we had, but it was important to set the vision from the outset. And I think in the next phase, we will do that, and we will use this phase to set that vision out, to show to people that this can be done and to outline the sort of benefits that you'll get from it. I think learning, we will continue to do what we did in terms of engagement, and we'll try and be better. You always try and be better, but we did a lot of engagement on this because it happened around about COVID as well. So we ended up doing it about the public consultation about 3 times. So it was good to talk to people, get people's feedback. We did a lot of consultation with the access focus groups. It's like an inclusion group in Cardiff that we've set up in the council. That was really beneficial. And I think we would try next time to bring businesses a bit more along with us. Hopefully they'd have a bit more belief now, and see if we could set up sort of a business group to sort of push the project along a little bit maybe as well.
And yeah, I suppose from a design perspective, you know, as Gethin mentioned, we have produced some conceptual designs for the second phase, which would be south from the current kind of endpoint. And I think with that, it's an amazing opportunity because it would kind of increase the canal opening from about 70 meters to just over 200 meters in total. So it's obviously that's a huge opportunity, and thankfully within that, Cardiff have been very brave with trying to envisage a complete a street that's completely devoid of any traffic. So that opens up huge opportunities further. I suppose in terms of geometry, you know, the geometry at the moment is quite square because it's quite a compact site and it's all kind of centered as a kind of almost mirrored image with the stage kind of being at that middle point. But because of the length of it, we're introducing more curved geometry into it to kind of bring a new dynamic and to break up the kind of linear nature of the culvert itself. So that's an exciting thing. And, you know, we're looking at introducing things like play, you know, other water features that are more interactive, and just lots of, you know, flexible, usable spaces that will kind of go from, you know, a very kind of high street orientated one to, you know, a slightly different feel down at the southern end.
Are there just following on to that? So are there any opportunities?
We're running on.
Yeah, are there any opportunities to sort of do more nature-based rather than, like you said, more you know, the concrete side of things?
When you say nature-based, how do you mean? Sorry.
Greener, softer, more access to the water.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's all very dependent on levels. On the second concept design, we are getting lower to the water's edge, but it's all a kind of balancing act between getting accessible slopes rather than ramps down, and, you know, trying to eliminate any kind of stepped areas. You know, so we are kind of looking at various ways of doing that. Yes.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, I enjoy the intensity of the project and the spirit of the project. And, you know, I've been in so many moments where people say there's a lot going on in a design, you know, and I think this one, it'd be fair to say there's a lot going on in the design because you packed so much in, and you actually presented it like that. I personally love the stage component and the way you brought that to life. I think that's really fab. The only question I have is just to really understand what's driven. It's not so important for this award actually, but just out of interest, what's driven the aesthetic, let's say, of the stage design? Is there a rooting in the past or rooting in the present, or did you learn something from different structures? What's actually driven the aesthetic? I think Sarah, in a way, was touching upon that really as well in terms of the balance of the hard and the soft. So with respect to the structures, let's say, what's driven the aesthetic piece?
I mean, interestingly, the stage was almost an outcome of the constraints of the site, because on the eastern side, we have a huge amount of utilities. So we couldn't really terrace down in the same way that we did on the western side. So because we had a terrace, it would have otherwise been just looking at a blank facade, and we didn't want that. So we had therefore had a much kind of softer edge on the east, where a sudden drop then leads to a rain garden. And then because we'd effectively created an amphitheatre, we thought, well, why not put a stage in? And then obviously that added another kind of, tick box to the project of having a cultural event right at the heart of it as well. And also to add to the variety of soft and hard edges between those. Also, another thing to mention is obviously we couldn't get away from the fact that the culvert is concrete. Therefore, we did use concrete in some of the retaining structures, but we used like interesting form liners with that to add visual interest. And generally speaking, added robust kind of materials within that as well.
Thank you very much. I'm just aware of time, so
Thanks.
sorry, Gethin, to skip over you. But Bridget, do you want to ask something?
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks so much. It's very encouraging to see, space reclaimed for water that's been hidden, and all of those kinds of transformative changes that it's very exciting project. So thank you for that. I guess my questions to some extent are linked to the others points around, like naturalization of the channel. I'm interested in how deep it is, whether the water level varies, whether there's any flow, and why it was necessary to retain a hard bank specifically. I'm looking at something that looks relatively still, potentially relatively stable, and I'm just interested in that kind of more technical aspect.
Well, the water is managed by a sluice gate at Black Weir, which comes from the River Taff. So it's a constant flow that has a repeatable peak height throughout the day. It kind of goes like that at like one point during the day. So we kind of know the level it is. Actually, the water level is very, very shallow, partly because originally the water level would have been much higher when the docks were in operation. But one of the major docks got filled in back in the 1960s, I believe, so that the amount of water just isn't required, but it still does retain a constant flow through the scheme in that respect. And in terms of, the culvert itself, we can be constrained with the amount of things that we could put into the culvert, because the Association of British Ports have right to the water, and we didn't want anything to disrupt the original simple engineering that had gone on with that. Also, within the constraints of the site, it was only so low we could get down. We did actually take a chunk out of the wall on the western side to get people even lower, but those were the kind of constraints we were working within.
Yeah, we find it difficult because we didn't own the flow, so there was no way of dictating it. But it does go up and down the flow. It does act as a drainage and storm facility for the city as well. So yeah.
Okay, that's remarkable. We've now got a minute left. So has anyone got, again, a sort of lightning question to ask? David, you were sort of cut off early, so I'll give you first refusal. No, okay.
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you.
Sarah or Bridget? No, are we okay?
I've got a technical question. Sorry, just the water quality draining from the street through the SUD system into that canal. Is it going through filtering? Are you relying on plants? How's that working?
It goes through the rain garden substrate. There's a mulch layer initially, so that captures quite a lot of heavy metals or kind of pollutants in that kind of first flush of during rain events. And then there's at least between 0.5 meter and 1 meter, depending on the actual bed of substrates where it's going through that, and then other subsequent layers underneath. But just to say, kind of reinforce the fact that SAB, the SUDS approving body, we worked with them as design partners throughout. So all of the kind of questions of water quality we felt confident in having met.
Thank you so much for everyone's time. That's just gone over 10 minutes, so that is perfect. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
So the next presentation that we have is Finsbury Circus Gardens for the City of London, Corporation of London with Realm, Studio Weave, Potter Raper, Tybalt's, Maylim, Ingenuity, XC02, TMA Environmental Consultants, and Canda. And this is going to be presented by Ed Freeman, who's a principal partner at Realm. Thanks,
Thank
Ed.
you. Thank you, Natasha. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you and I can see your
Perfect.
You're
Okay.
good to go.
Thank you. So my name's Ed Freeman. I'm principal partner at Realm, and delighted to present Finsbury Circus Gardens today at the 2026 Festival of Pineapples. Finsbury Circus Gardens is one of the UK's most significant park regenerations. Encircled by an oval architectural circus, the Grade 2 listed garden is located on the site of Moorfields, London's first public park, which dates back to 1606 and is the largest public green space in the square mile. The space has a fascinating history, from the natural processes that formed it to the communities that helped shape it. Completed last summer, the renewed public space creates a revitalised public realm for future generations to enjoy, a tranquil haven for people and nature, with increased equitable space and accessibility, improving biodiversity with new planting palettes and trees selected for climate change and resilience. The cultural context of the space begins in the late 2nd century. The original green space emerged through both natural and man-made processes when the Romans built the London Wall around Londinium. This partially dammed the River Walbrook, creating marshy fen-like conditions that later gave rise to the name Fensbury and later Finsbury. For centuries, the park has served as a haven for the community. It hosted archery practice, laundry drying, and leisure walks as recorded in the 17th century copperplate map. During times of crisis, including the Great Fire of London, outbreaks of the Black Death, it became a temporary refuge for displaced Londoners. The site was also home to Bethlem Royal Hospital, England's first psychiatric hospital, and William Hogarth's A Rake's Progress famously depicts conditions within the institution, then widely known as Bedlam, reflecting a complex and sometimes troubling social history embedded in the landscape. In 1815, George Dance the Younger introduced a formal layout, and later in 1873, the Metropolitan Railway was extended from Moorgate to Aldgate using cut and cover construction, leaving a tunnel just 60 centimetres beneath the east end of the lawn, with the Post Office railway tunnel also running below the site. By the 1960s, the gardens were dominated by a private bowling green and exclusive wine bar. Public access was limited to narrow grass verges, while clipped topiary and ornamental bedding reduced ecological value. Access was further restricted by non-compliant steps, raised lawn edges and hedged barriers. The site links Liverpool Street and Moorgate stations, with footfall data showing 44% entering from the west and 39% from the east, yet movement was confined to a single perimeter path. Environmental conditions were also challenging. Shaded areas in the west hindered lawn growth, worsened by bird feeding. Overgrown evergreen shrubs created deep shade, limited passive surveillance, and enabled antisocial behaviour. Mature trees required careful design adjustments to protect their roots. The construction of Crossrail's Liverpool Street station, connecting through to Moorgate, closed the gardens from 2010 to 2020, and a temporary lawn replacement created drainage and accessibility issues. The COVID pandemic required remote consultation and design coordination. The gardens are Grade 2 listed and on Historic England's Register of Parks and Gardens. Extensive research and archaeological investigation were undertaken with MOLA to support planning. Close consultation with Historic England included co-designed dialogue to enhance the setting of a listed fountain. Engagement involved statutory and non-statutory stakeholders, local residences, businesses, political representatives, and community groups such as the Friends of City Gardens. Pop-up garden events enabled direct public feedback, fostering transparency and inclusion, and responses were overwhelmingly positive. Transport for London were consulted to address loading constraints above the Metropolitan Tunnel, and historical research with the London Archives, the London Picture Archives, and Bethlem Museum of the Mind informed interpretation. Guidance from Apicultural, Pollinating London, and the RHS Perfect for Pollinators initiative shaped biodiversity strategy. The redesign is grounded in the relationship between people and place, restoring the garden's role as a green civic haven. The master plan is structured around 3 interwoven layers: character and use zones, access and circulation, and biodiversity and habitat creation. Inspired by the concentric oval form of the surrounding circus, the ring of mature plane trees, and the circular historic path, the design introduces distinct character areas. The West Woodland Gardens, which are intimate and sheltered, the East Gardens, which are open and social, the Inner Gardens, which are biodiverse and protected. Central Lawn is a communal and flexible space. Material choices reference layered history. Kentish ragstone recalls the Roman wall, and serpentine paths and river-washed boulders echo the River Walbrook, and an inner limestone oval reflects the Portland stone facades of the surrounding circus. Accessibility has been transformed. A new primary route crosses the site whilst retaining a central heart, complemented by a secondary perimeter promenade and informal tertiary paths weaving through planting. Interpretation panels from lecterns explain key historical layers, planting strategies, and the site's evolving role within the city. Urban green space generates significant economic and social value. In the city, it's estimated to deliver £87 in health and wellbeing benefits for every £1 invested. The scheme introduced 6 new habitats, 12 climate-resilient tree species, and over 13,000 plants and 6,000 bulbs. Over 90% of the paving materials were reused or sourced within the UK. Seating capacity increased from 220 to 420 seats, responding to peak lunchtime demand. Replacing the private bowling green with a flexible lawn enables hundreds of people to gather in summer. The central lawn can accommodate concerts, outdoor cinema screenings, and civic events. And adjacent hardstanding supports staging, and recessed water and power connections around the perimeter enable pop-up markets and food vendors. Since reopening, the gardens have been active daily from early morning until dusk. They host meditation and yoga sessions, informal coffee meetings, team lunches, and student gatherings from the nearby Fashion College. Residents use the space also for the evening during relaxation. Throughout the day, it functions as a green corridor linking key destinations within the city. Consistent and varied use demonstrates its value to workers, residents, and visitors alike. Beneath mature London plain canopies, a woodland habitat has been established. Shade-tolerant shrubs and evergreen species provide year-round structure and seasonal fragrance near entrances and seating. Habitat features include loggeries for stag beetles, bat boxes, and bird nest boxes. At the west end, steps were replaced with a gentle DDA-compliant ramp. Clear pathways improve accessibility, encourage movement, and ragstone paths reference both the Roman wall and the River Walbrook. The central lawn provides flexible, step-free space for relaxation and informal gathering. Former raised edges were removed to ensure inclusive access. Long grass and herbaceous perennials create sheltered pockets. A high proportion of species are drawn from the RHS Perfect Pollinators list, with species that support nighttime flying moths, providing food for bats. Winter seed heads from Helenium and Phlomis offer seasonal foraging for birds. In the southeast, rain gardens form part of a sustainable drainage system, reducing runoff into surrounding streets. Subtle detailing references the historic Moorfields gates in the sun's perceptions. A wide variety of seating types creates inclusive human-scale spaces. Limestone benches support group dining. Timber benches where backs and armrests enhance comfort, and river boulders reference historic fabric. Wheelchair and buggy spaces are integrated throughout. Skateboards terraces are sculpted as acanthus leaves, echoing the architectural ornament. A muted paving palette reduces and minimises glare and supports neurodiverse visitors, with adjacent materials carefully analysed to reduce variation in LRV values for those living with dementia. The planting strategy ensures a year-round interest and measurable ecological gains. Planting beds are 27% larger than before Crossrail, and the project achieved a biodiversity net gain of 19.5% and an urban greening factor score of 0.45. An iTree survey demonstrated improved resilience through greater species diversity, balanced age distribution, and increased lifespan. Projected ecosystem service benefits include pollutant removal increasing from 25 to 38 kilograms per year, carbon storage rising from 87 to 134 metric tons, and improved water interception and reduced runoff. This landmark renewal reflects the City Corporation's ambition to attract businesses, workers, and visitors to the square mile. High quality public space acts as an economic catalyst, strengthening social, environmental, and commercial viability. Renewed gardens enhance health and well-being, builds climate resilience, and significantly increase biodiversity. Most importantly, they restore equitable access to a historic civic landscape. I'd just like to end with a comment on social media that we found, which captures the spirit of the transformation. Finsbury Circus is one of my favourite places to eat my Tesco meal deal lunch and people watch the corporates eating their £25 takeaway salads. We are all enjoying the same beautiful place for free. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. That was great. So we're now going to bring the judges up and ask you a few questions. I shall start the timer. So we are back around at the beginning. So Bridget, you're up first.
Hi, Bridget.
Yeah, hello. Thank you so much for that. It's a really elegant scheme, really beautifully detailed, and yeah, it looks fabulous. So yeah, thanks for that presentation. Just wondered a little bit about the seating and playfulness of the space. I know that there's not that many residents in the City of London, but Islington's not so far away from Finsbury Circus. There's quite a lot of youth there and they have limited open space. So I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about approach to maybe social and group seating, and also anything around playability.
Sure, no, absolutely. Really valued questions. Thank you, Bridget. I think, well, the key thing about seating, I mean, the success of public space is down to having enough seating. And it was obvious to encourage more people to come and dwell is to have a different range of seating options and available to all visitors. What we've tried to do is maximise the historic ring of seating around the edge, and that provides a nice sheltered area to sit, sometimes in sun, sometimes in shade, offering views across the gardens and across the planting and the park itself. And then we incorporate other timber benches with backs, and they're sort of clustered around some of the suds planting beds to offer opportunities to sort of communicate and mingle a little bit more. But I think what's really important is sometimes people, especially this is really well used by office workers, right? It is absolutely thronged with office workers during lunch times. And sometimes, dare I say it, I don't want to speak to anyone. I just want to sit there on my own, maybe as part of a community, and feel as though I'm in a communal space, but I just want to relax and I just want to have some time to myself and enjoy nature, be with my own thoughts. But at the same time, we do offer communal space. The central green space is a fantastic flexible lawn space, and if you've been there in summer, it is absolutely packed in there, and that provides not only space to mingle, to gather, but it's also to play. You might have seen some of those photographs of people doing handstands and acrobats and all that sort of stuff, and kids just love to have access and touch the lawn and actually just integrate with nature. We do have a series of interpretation signage panels. They have just started, they're getting put in now, and there's more getting made currently. I was actually on site yesterday, and some of those interpretation panels tell the interesting story of people and place. So I think there's a learning interpretation element with that. And I think it's providing playable landscapes. So some of the boulder seats allow people to sit, and the actual boulder paving as well, we've designed it as stepping stones. So you have larger, bigger ones that people and children can hodgepodge across. So I hope that answers or addresses some of your points in your query.
Thanks, Ed. Sarah, you're next.
Yeah, lovely scheme, Ed. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask, how does it fit into the wider locality cityscape? Did you look at the surrounding area and make sort of that connectivity? And also regarding the kind of maintenance side of things, what was the strategy to make sure that it's sustainable and maintained?
It's a really two good points there. Connectivity, I mean, I touched upon that before. It's a really interesting site, and when we first approached it and visited the site as part of the initial stages before concept design, it is such a haven. It's got a very special character. The architectural circus sort of bounces sound and birdsong around. It also provides a bit of a sort of shield from the wider city life. This amazing architectural, it's like a cathedral canopy of green, of this mantle going around the space, is just stunning. It just takes your breath away. And it's those points that we wanted to try and retain as this oasis. I know it's well overused, the term oasis, but it such is an oasis in the city. But at the same time, we needed to ensure that there was movement throughout. And previously, when you came into the site, you were met with a 90-degree turn to your left or your right. And you were met with a hedge that was circulating around a private bowling green. It wasn't usable. And with the introduction of Crossrail, which was planned for a long time, as you well know, they anticipated an increase in the already busy footfalls coming through. And during the day, it does act as quite a busy thoroughfare. But what we didn't want to do is do a direct line from A to B and cut that space up. But what we did subtly do is create a really direct route, but just not circuitous, it was just curving around that central space. And it's worked really well, I'm so pleased to say. People use the space. We've still got movable chairs. We've got seating along that side. It doesn't feel as though people are bumping into each other. We had to design it a little bit wider than you perhaps would design a path, because it had seating alongside, because it had planting, and to allow that flexibility. So yeah, we did consider that. And taking up your point about maintenance and also context, the City Gardens is a department within the Natural Environment Board, or was governed by the Natural Environment Board. I think that's the terminology within the City of London. And so they do really treasure and cherish green space within the City of London, and is part of a wider network of green spaces, of churchyards, of plazas, smaller little hidden spaces and some larger ones. And it's that connectivity of creating that green infrastructure throughout the city, and it's all overseen, or rather maintained, in-house. And so they put money into that, and there is a dedicated City Gardens team. And as part of the development of the transformation of Finsbury Circus Gardens, a new Parks office by Studio Weave was carefully integrated within the site. And that Parks office allows passive surveillance. It's got fantastic large windows. And also that sort of a parks keeper. There's always someone walking around on site, which I think really helps with passive surveillance as well. And adjacent to that is a yard. And from this dedicated Parks office for the City Gardeners, they maintain not only Finsbury Circus, but all the city spaces around.
Thanks.
Hopefully that's answered your question.
Okay, David, you're up. We've got 2.5 minutes left for question and answer.
Yeah, cool. I think it's an absolutely beautiful scheme. Incredibly well detailed and considered, and very comprehensively presented. I was sort of looking to each light to think, is there going to be some diversity? Oh yes, there is. Is there going to be some habitat differentiation? Oh yes, there is. Are there going to be character areas? Because of course it's a very formal circus, and therefore it could be bland. And so I feel like you sort of respected the heritage whilst adding the diversity, which I think is really, really cool. I guess an interest question: whose idea was it to unprivatize this space?
It was It's a really good. When you say unprivatise it, there's a couple of layers of that. When it was first laid out by William Montague, who was the city surveyor, it was laid out as a residential suburb, so that square was a private residential garden. And you're really testing me now. There was a particular councillor, and I've forgotten their name, and I apologise, back in the 1800s, I think it was, who championed giving this space back to publicly available space. And they did that successfully. And then from that point, it was a garden. And then it went into the 1960s, and bowling became a fashionable thing and sort of took centre stage, unfortunately. And the public accessibility in the equitable space sort of wasn't happening, really. So the decision to take out the bowling green, we suggested that. It was actually taken out because of Crossrail, but it could have been put back in. But we thought that it's not the right thing to do for to ensure the longevity of the garden for generations to come.
I think it's just for me, it's a really powerful statement. There are so many areas that are privatised. There's so much public space that actually ends up being private space. The idea that this actually genuinely becomes a proper public space, and that's why I thought it was a powerful ending with the kind of the Tesco meal deal comparison. But I mean, it's a massive statement from the City of London, and I think Sarah's kind of question about how does it tie into the rest is interesting. Is this a statement the City of London Corporation is going to continue making, like publicly making public space rather than privatisation? Is it the start of a lexicon of spaces we might see across the city?
I think it's really interesting. I think space is so such a premium, isn't it? I mean, in such an urban environment such as London or any UK city or global city. So I think the movement to the green renaissance movement, really, to really put green infrastructure and landscape biodiversity sustainability at the forefront of the agenda is getting embraced through all businesses, really, and it's great. And even working with business improvement districts, they do a fantastic job in pushing that agenda.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry.
Interrupt, because I'll let you have a closing statement, but we're over time now.
Can I ask one last little question? What was your budget? Because I'm aware that there was a competition in Studio Weave going to put a building in there and other things. So I assume the budget went at some point. So what did you have to deal with, just so we know?
So the budget was 4.2 million in the end.
4.2 million. Okay, yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
Perfect. Ed, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
So this concludes the first part of the judging, and I think we can all agree we've had a huge amount of information that we've got to process. So we are very lucky that we've got 10 minutes to do so. We will be back for the second half after a short break and more contenders for the Pineapples for Public Space. We'll see you back here in, I'm going to say, I reckon at 11:20 to make it easy for people and allow people to get a cup of tea or do whatever they need to do. Thank you for watching Pineapples, and see you shortly. Welcome back to the Festival of Pineapples, the live judging for the Pineapple Awards for Place. My name's Natasha McIntyre Hall. I'm the head of regeneration for Gleeds Advisory, and I am your chair for this category. For over 2 decades, I've dedicated my career to fostering equitable places. I've led numerous multi-billion-pound place transformations driven by the unwavering belief that an individual's birthplace should not dictate their life opportunities. My current focus lies at the crossroads between purpose-led design, AI governance, and the firm conviction that true places are defined by their community and not just their buildings. This session is the second half of the judging for the category of public space for the Pineapple Awards for Place. This category seeks to recognise landscape or public space projects, large or small, that make a positive contribution to the life of a wider place and social and environmental impact. Public space is proudly supported by Vesta. Vesta's core philosophy is to bring people and communities together by creating social, colourful and sustainable places. Now we've got some great finalists to share with you, and a reminder of the rule. Each presenter has 10 minutes to pitch the judges, who then have 10 minutes to ask questions. After hearing the presentations, the judges will deliberate in private to decide the winner. Who will win the Pineapple? That's going to be announced at the Pineapple Awards party on the 22nd of April at Trinity Buoy Wharf in London. Tickets to the party are on sale now at thepineapples.co.uk. A selection of the finalists will also be invited to present their work on stage at this summer's Festival of Place on the 10th of June at Box Park, Wembley, London. Feel free to use the emoji buttons below to cheer on our presenters. I'm having problems with that word today. To cheer on our presenters today and share your comments in the chat. The judges will be the only ones actually asking questions. So welcome back to our judges. We have Dr. Bridget Snaith, Dr. Sarah Ali, and David West. So Dr. Bridget Snaith is an academic at the School of Architecture and Landscape in Sheffield University. She's a landscape architect with 30 years experience in community-centered landscape design and co-design. Her research focuses on equity and social justice in the design and management of green spaces and the role that designers and other placemakers can play in tackling cultural inequality. She was part of the team at the University of Sheffield that authored Included Outside publication series for National England in 2022. She's currently working with colleagues on a further publication of the series to be released early in 2026. Dr. Sarah Ali is the President-elect of the Landscape Institute and the Landscape Architect and Team Leader, Landscape Designer and Conservation, City of Bradford Metropolitan District Council. Sarah is leading the way by creating environments that promote greener, healthier and more prosperous communities and making a unique contribution to improving the environment by supporting social, cultural and environmental heritage, nature conservation and climate action projects through community collaboration across the district. She's also the Environment Agency appointed independent member at Yorkshire Regional Flood and Coastal Committee. David West is a founding director at Studio Egret West. He has nearly 30 years of experience in urban visions, strategic framework and site-specific place interventions. He's overseen many of Studio Egret West's award-winning projects, bringing well-considered and innovative approach to numerous complex sites across the UK and abroad, ranging from large-scale urban regeneration developments to edge of centre communities, both old and new. Places that David has helped shape include Earls Court, Smithfield, East Wickham Sweetwater, New Bermondsey, Lewisham Shopping Centre and the old vinyl factory in London, Mayfield and Holt Town in Manchester, Digbeth and Arden Cross in Birmingham, South Bank in Bratislava, and that is just to name a few. So now it's time to hear from our next project. So just this quick reminder, presenters have 10 minutes to pitch their project and that will be followed by a 10-minute question and answer from the judges. So first one up is Rochdale Town Hall in Rochdale for Rochdale Development Agency and Rochdale Borough Council with Gillespie's, Donald Insole Associates, Max Fordham and H.H. Smith and Sons and Bureau Happold. And it's going to be presented by Warren Chapman, who's an associate partner at Gillespie's, and Jim Gibson, who's a partner at Gillespie's.
And Jim and Warren, if you want to just put that into kind of full screen or a slideshow mode there.
Is that full screen?
Do you have a kind of slideshow or option there? Let's see. I might suggest, and we can just pause the time, if you wanted to kind of take those down and reload them and choose the select PDF file option, and then that will just look a bit better for the audience. And thank you for your patience, audience.
Okay, let me just...
Yeah, so if you do the select PDF file on the right when you share, that should work better.
Not sure if it is on the desktop there.
So do you see that option when you, there's the...
Yeah, we're just trying to locate the PDF.
Okay, great.
Share screen, thank you.
No worries. Thank you, audience, for your patience. This will make the experience much better. Don't worry, we will start your 10 minutes once you find this.
So I'm struggling to find it. It's saved on the folder.
No worries.
Maybe you have to go back to the email.
Must be saved.
Natasha, I might just get you up to do one of those little messages that they've canned messages from the script just while they're looking for this. if you're there, Natasha. Oops. Pardon me. Oh gosh.
Do you want me to sing to fill the gap?
Yeah, go for it, Natasha. You can do some messages to our audience. Thanks, everyone.
Right, we've located it. We're just loading it now, hopefully.
Pressure. This screen.
Are you guys all right there, or shall?
Yeah. Let's see if that works. Sorry about that. It was on my other.
Great, thanks. Okay, your 10 minutes will start now. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Yes, good morning. Sorry about that. Slight technical glitch. Can you hear me okay? Am I loud and clear? Hopefully. Good morning from Gillespie's, Jim Gibson and Warren. We had the great privilege of doing the design for Rochdale Town Hall Civic Square. This project has been in the studio for a number of years, and looking back on our files, we actually were awarded the design, following a design competition, the project in 2019, and have been working on it since then. The project, let me just scroll forward. This is the context of the town hall. The town hall was built in 1871, so it's kind of 150 years old, and is the kind of Grade 1 listed building in the centre of Rochdale, which is one of the suburb towns of Greater Manchester. As you can see from these historic photos, the setting of the town hall in recent years was something to behold. Grade 1 listed building basically sat isolated in a car park, and our brief when we were presented it by the Rochdale Development Agency was to reconnect the town and the town hall to the town centre, which is effectively to the south and the left of the town hall that you can see there. They wanted to remove the majority of traffic and car parking from the civic square, introduce civic greening, and essentially create a multifunctional public space to befit the Grade 1 listed town hall. I'll just turn the page. Our concept design at the design competition stage, which actually remarkably sometimes has remained completely intact through the trials and tribulations of delivery, was to do exactly that, was to create a civic plaza in front of the town hall where there was previously a car park. And you can see we've introduced the grand lawn, or the great lawn as we called it, to be a setting, a green setting for the town hall itself, the main front and facade, and to connect the town hall to the Grade 2-star War Memorial and Cenotaph, which is in front of the building, which is a Lutyens designed war memorial. We also were challenged to present a large multifunctional hard landscape, because the town have a number of festivals that they wanted to retain in the civic area and encourage in the civic area. So the area to the left of the town hall, as you see it there, is effectively an events space with trees that can be moved and moved around. So it was a completely flexible space to allow for concerts and events. The area at the back of the town hall on the slopes, the Packer Spout Hidden History, was a later addition to the brief, which was historically, with the Packer Spout, was the historic spring, which was the kind of focus of medieval Rochdale. Was an area of steep slopes and an area for effectively antisocial behaviour, drug abuse and alcohol abuse. And the challenge in that area was to introduce and reintroduce some of the historic references to this part of the town hall, connect the town hall to the parish church at the top of the slopes there, and basically to improve biodiversity, passive surveillance, and make the area far more accessible and welcoming to the public. So the whole place, as you can see, unsurprisingly, with the town hall as the focus, got an extraordinarily civic feel, and that was very much our obvious intent. The final kind of an aerial shot here just reinforces some of the points that I was making. In the foreground is the cenotaph and the memorial gardens, the grand lawn, framing the main facade of the town hall. To the left of the view is the flexible space for outdoor events and performances. We'll touch on that later in the presentation. And on the area behind, you can see the slopes, which was a Heritage Lottery funded initiative, connecting the town hall to the parish church at the top of the hill there. I'll then move the slide forward. Warren's going to now step in and discuss some of the more detailed aspects of the design.
Thanks, Jim. Yes, so I'm just going to cover in a bit more detail some of the main elements of the intervention around the town hall, just to add a bit more background and context to them. So up on the screen there now, we're looking at the lawns. Jim touched on the fact that this was an area of car park before, and when we started working the project, there seemed to be an assumption that we would just replace the car park with a paved space. So kind of early doors, we challenged that in terms of can we bring greenery into this space? Can we bring a formal lawn that links with the other formal lawns? Because actually, I don't know if any of you have been to Rochdale, but it's got a great pride in civic kind of horticulture. They have a great team of people there who look after this type of thing. So we were keen to explore that and also look at maybe the positive effects in terms of sustainable urban drainage that we could bring out in having lawns rather than paving. So this was the idea for the lawn here, and it links very nicely with the kind of cenotaph area behind. So we're very pleased with that, and the seating edges all the way around the lawn. Then the event space, I mean, it just looks like an area of simple paving as you walk through it now, but it just provides this amazing kind of space for all the festivals and things that the council planned throughout the year. But we had to be very careful in terms of building in a pop-up power and water supplies to kind of allow these events to take place annually. We work quite closely with the event organisers to make sure that their requirements in terms of loading capacity and space, which was quite enormous actually. We're quite surprised how much space they require to kind of set up stages and take them away. So all of that was built into this space to kind of help animate it. And on the right-hand section of the slide, we're highlighting terraces around the town hall, which are actually, you can hardly notice them as you walk around the space now, which is entirely the idea, because this is a great listed building. And to get planning permission for this, quite a sensitive approach. And the raised floor level in the building meant that didn't do something like this, we'd have lots of different ramps and steps all the way around the edges that would look quite dysfunctional. So we had an idea of treating it with a kind of more significant approach to create this raised area of paving, which would function as a spill out space for the cafe that's planned within the town hall. But also provide space for people to kind of be apart from the main square and kind of just look down. It's only slightly elevated, but it's actually quite incredible the feeling you get at the kind of observation point. And we're really pleased with the way that works. So the next slide should just come through hopefully. And then this is kind of focusing on the area at the back of the town hall, well, that was called the slopes. Now, if you haven't seen this area before, it's actually quite hard to imagine what it was like. It was totally overgrown. It was a hotspot and social behaviour. In fact, the first phase that had to be done was just really fencing off the area and cleaning it up sharp to make it safe for people to actually work in the space. So there's a lot of clearance done, and now our kind of focus was to really unlock the story of this space, because we know that it's quite instrumental in the start of Rochdale as a township. And we were very focused initially on the type of planting, because the planting elsewhere we've done was quite ornamental. So we thought this was the space for more nature-based planting, because actually there were some vestiges of really kind of early groupings of wildflowers here that we were retaining and building upon. So it was quite a nice kind of approach that's been led by kind of natural planting species. To help with the storytelling and involve people, we've been very keen to use bespoke street furniture rather than just kind of catalogue items. And so we've commissioned a local artist and worked alongside them in delivering some kind of unique pieces. And the benches we're looking at here, they're called the global benches. There's various sets of them that kind of ring the trees, and they basically highlight textile patterns from various continents that in history traded with Rochdale, but actually now nicely reflect the diverse population of Rochdale. So there's a really nice link there, and working with community groups to help pick the patterns that were then incised into the glazed terracotta that you can see on screen. And that's been a really successful kind of partnership and project. And on the right-hand side, we're highlighting the storytelling of the Packer Spout, which was actually a natural spring. This is a very steep slope. It's actually a spring line. And this very springs here were actually where Rochdale started, really, in terms of a source of clean, safe water. And working with groups of people, with local community groups, various ages, we were deciding what stories are we going to tell, what are we going to highlight about Rochdale. They were very keen that we don't just tell the story of a northern textile town, maybe to look at the earlier origins that Rochdale has in terms of medieval town. And this
I'm
is
just going to jump in here. I'm so sorry. We're running over time, so if you've got any final statements to make.
Okay, no problem. We'll click through. Yes. There's some nice pictures of all the community consultation that was done. It was huge and varied, from young people at school to teenagers' work placements, and a local homeless charity that was very instrumental in helping to plan the slopes. We've got some metrics which hopefully you can see in terms of the number of people that were involved and engaged across the whole project, which is pretty huge, really. It also involved training people to enable heritage work placements to take place in the future. So people went with a CV, which they didn't have before, which is incredible. And on the final slide, I think there's a lovely picture of the lawns in use. I mean, that was actually before the project was finished. People were so keen to get into this space and use it in the summer holiday. It was incredible to see it. So apologies for running over there. There's a lot to get through, and it's a hugely impressive scheme with a lot of impact.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Yeah, 10 minutes feels like a brutal amount of time to talk about something you've poured your own.
That's 7 years and condensed into 10 minutes.
So we now have the judges back with us. So I am going to start with David first, please.
Thank you. Great presentation. It's fab to see that the big car park concrete and there transformed into a kind of a major new piece of public space. So yeah, worth that 7 years of carjacker. I guess my question actually is about the formality of the space. I'm very familiar with Gillespie's work across the nation and overseas, and obviously very familiar with kind of a growing trend towards more naturalized, softer, kind of more loose, more informal spaces. So I'm sitting here quite intrigued as to why you chose to make it so symmetrical, so clean, so lawn-like, and so unfettered, really, in terms of more organic kind of response. Yeah, that's my question. Why?
Okay, and that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, we explored this early doors, and we wanted to create a design that we felt would be timeless. But we didn't want to put anything in there that was going to date too quickly. So that was a key observation. It's a Grade 1 listed building, and we had a lot of traction with Victorian Society, talking about how it could be designed and the interface of the building. So that kind of brought into maybe looking at more of a civic response. And as Jim highlighted, we have a link between the Grade 1 listed town hall and the Cenotaph. So that really dictated that kind of axis. So it was all those kind of thoughts coming together. And then when the opportunity arose for the slopes behind the town hall to be very informal, nature-based planting solutions, we thought, yes, this is great. And I think, as I've highlighted before, the Green Spaces team in Rochdale, they have a massive passion for planting. You know, perhaps a little bit too much bedding around the town centre, but they really look after it well. And we wanted to give them something they would want to look after and feel proud about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, you got cut off, Natasha. Did you ask to speak? Me to ask my
Yeah,
question?
yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay, I couldn't hear you. Sorry. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks very much for that presentation. And yeah, it's a fantastic thing to see. You know, public space created where it was previously just car dominated, and being more available for people to use, particularly town centre spaces. And I think that's going to touch a note with Sarah there for the Bradford work that she's done, which it obviously has some similarities to in terms of the location. What I'm interested in, as usual, I guess, is around the people side of it. And I'm just interested to know perhaps a little bit about how you felt the space reached out to diverse audiences, to children with families, you know, and their children, maybe youth. What aspects of the design were kind of thought through for those kinds of different groups who might be there for different reasons?
Okay, yeah, this was a common thread through the whole project, and was a key part, I think, really the funding application for the HLF originally. So there's lots of workshops done with local residents and school children about what they thought the space could be used for, just to gathering basic ideas, however blue sky thinking there were. So we got people talking about how could this car park be used, what would you like to do in this space. So there was all that kind of aspect early doors that helped to inform the concept design. But then throughout the kind of detailed design project, there were some aspects of the kind of co-design in terms of the paving patterns and the benches and some placement of benches. And we had kind of workshops and some kind of educational sessions with the local sixth form college in terms of getting them to think about how they make, because I didn't mention just off screen, there was the sixth form college, so the students walked through the space every day, and so there was workshops with them talking about how they would use the space and different types of seating, how they would sit and all that type of thing. So that kind of helped us frame the more formal aspects of the design. But then when it came to the slopes at the back of the town hall, I would say that was a softer approach, and we didn't really ever have a totally fixed design for that, other than getting an accessible route up from the kind of plaza area up to the Pacas Bow, to the spring, so people could actually access it properly for the first time, you know, in history really. But in terms of the layout of the space, the types of planting and the storytelling, that involved lots of different groups coming together, not with me personally, but one of the community kind of outreach workers, to decide on what they wanted the focus to be. So when they came back with people, they could point out aspects of the design they thought they'd influence in terms of storytelling, paving. There's some benches going in that are focusing on facts around. It was quite interesting. I mentioned the spring, the clean water being the start of Rochdale, but there's obviously wider kind of global issues now around access to clean water, and there's workshops around all of this. So it was quite wide-reaching sometimes, and quite challenging to kind of focus on the aspects you wanted to put into the scheme from the start, because that was one of the key things for us to do. I think the final thing I'd like to say is at the outset, the building, the neo-Gothic building, was seen as being very scary, off-putting, and that was the feedback people gave in the community. It wasn't a place they felt that they could go into. And so working with the local primary school, just at the top of the hill, and again with the sixth form college, we got them to come into the building, look at the motifs and decoration, and that was some of the things that were brought out and then used in terms of the paving patterns. And there's kind of interpretation around that. There's some really quirky symbols in the town hall that if you look at on their own, they're actually quite funny and comical, but when they're seen in a big scary kind of Gothic building, it felt quite uninviting. So it was about breaking down that kind of threshold and working with the architects, to be honest about that as well, in terms of creating glazed entrances. You can see inside the building now from the square. So all of these things kind of came together to really help maximise the community involvement, I would say, on that sense.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Bridget. Sarah.
Jim, Warren. As Bridget said, I know exactly the challenges of working with, a town hall, like, building of that scale, and reshaping the space around it from a concrete jungle, basically, dominated by traffic, into something green and something that is more for people. So how do you think that the project delivered on innovation for Rochdale?
Well, I think it's the original brief from the council, and it's part of a wider regeneration of Rochdale, point one, and to create a civic quarter in the town hall. The municipal, as in the government offices, function of the town hall had already been relocated to the municipal buildings, probably about 400 yards away. So the kind of town centre was reshaping itself and wanting the town hall to be absolutely square and central to that new civic offer, economic offer, social offer. And that was kind of a driving factor between the regeneration and redesign by Donald Insalls of the town hall building, but also the public space around the building. The two were hand in glove in regards to creating or kind of remembering and reigniting the civic part of the town. So in regards to that as a kind of innovation, economic innovation, it was central to the town hall's regeneration. We haven't gone into the detail of the river that has been partially reopened just off the plan, opening up part of the culverted River Roach. But this is, as any town centre regen, it's an important part of a jigsaw of pieces. It happens to the biggest civic part of that jigsaw, but it is part of a wider regeneration that is still happening, within the town, and the connections to the railway station is a project that's happening now, and some of the kind of dislocation of transport access that creates. So, the innovation, which I think Zara was at the heart of it was about economic regeneration and town centre placemaking as Rochdale tries to reposition itself as an important suburb in the wider Greater Manchester area.
I would just say also in terms of innovation, for me, the main innovation was persuading the town they didn't need a car-dominated space here and getting people on board. And it was a very generational thing. And it was interesting how young people embraced that much more quickly. The college students absolutely love the space the way it is. So it was that innovation of seeing that you don't need to park in this wonderful space.
Thank you so much. Sadly, we are out of time. So thank you so much for your presentation and questions. And we will move on to the next presentation. So the next presentation is Queen's Market and Queen's Square, the London Borough of Newham for London Borough of Newham with JA Projects, Nulty, BWA, EDP, Andreas Lechthaler Architects, and Simple Works. This is going to be presented by Jaden Ali, who's a director, and Alice Shepherd, who's a senior architect at JA Projects.
Okay, this is amazing. Can you hear me? Can you give me just like a
Yeah,
yes?
I can hear you, and we can see the slides. We're on to a winner, so off you go.
Fantastic. Good morning from a 6 a.m. in snowy Philadelphia. So there's points for commitment here. I'm Jaden, director of JA Projects, and joined by Alice. I'll be doing the presentation just to keep it kind of super slick, I hope, but me and Alice will dive in on questions. So I can see the controls. Queen's Market sits at the heart of Upton Park in East London, embedded within Green Street. It's one of London's most culturally rich and active high streets. And this map just situates the project within this dense urban network of homes, transport connections, local businesses, and everyday services. But for over a century, the market has functioned as essential civic infrastructure. It was a street market, then it got a roof put on it, and it's morphed into this kind of like central piece of daily life as well as a destination. Thousands of residents rely on it for affordable goods and social interaction, yet the supporting public realm have become fragmented, underperforming, limiting opportunities to gather or dwell, and impacting trade, importantly, which sits at the core of a market. The market has in recent times been at the perennial risk of development, leading to the communities it serves not feeling cared for. And so our starting point was really to recognize the value already present within the market and strengthen it, supporting how people live, work, and connect within the neighborhood and the high street that is the best of London and our shared civic spaces. The market serves one of London's most diverse communities, shaped by multiple migration histories and cultural traditions. It's a plurality of languages, food, and trading practices that coexist within a shared public environment, and it makes the market a rare space where difference is celebrated through everyday interaction. For many residents, particularly low-income households, the market is an affordable gateway, an initial platform to be entrepreneurial, as well as a spot to feed the family cheaply. It acts as an economic lifeline and a social meeting place. Engagement revealed really poor lighting, as you can see, limited seating, fragmented routes, affected accessibility and trade, but also perceptions of safety were really poor, particularly for women and girls. And our ambition was therefore to create a public space that totally changed this narrative, a welcoming, legible, hardworking, safe environment, enabling residents, traders, and visitors to thrive together. The GLA Good Growth project is actually one of 3 on site, and actually one of 4 on site. There are 2 projects together and the 2 that have been delivered. So it's a tough place to work. But the project reimagines the neighborhood block as a cohesive public space supporting trade and community life and environmental resilience. This drawing just shows the scale of interventions that were spread across a modest budget of 1.6 million. And so there was a real emphasis on hard-working infrastructural spaces, but with the sentiment of care only possible through design quality. The public square was redesigned with suds and landscaping and trees and lighting and seating to create places to rest and gather and trade and perform. It was conceived in COVID, so adaptive reuse of former retail units were converted into accessible hygiene facilities, public loos, water points, staff welfare facilities, storage, offices, all supporting market operations. And new timber glulam canopies improved trading conditions through shelter, lighting, power, signage, and flooring. The purpose was to safeguard the future of the market while increasing footfall and diversity of use, creating a welcoming civic anchor, supporting inclusive growth and a resilient low-carbon high street. I would say that the community participation is one of the real big innovations in this project, and it shaped the project through a bespoke co-design program, which we call Talking Shop. Rather than formal consultation, engagement took place within the everyday market life itself. We held a market stall, for example. We served like 2,000 cups of chai, for example. Shared meals, temporary installations, informal conversations were all part of that strategy. Uniquely, we led a community steering group that co-designed the co-design. I can say more about that if you're interested afterwards, but I think it's super unique. They shaped these activities that were designed to reach voices often excluded from planning processes, including women, young people, and traders, and we communicated in multiple languages. For example, we composed a team that could speak both Hindi and Gujarati. Activities required no specialist knowledge. Food became a shared medium for discussion, enabling people who might not normally share a table to exchange ideas openly. Participants tested layouts, activities, future uses, directly informing the design of seating, lighting, and programming infrastructure. And this process started to ensure that the space evolved from a collective knowledge, building trust and enabling the long-term stewardship, which is so kind of vital to the success of and growth of its community. Inclusivity shaped every design decision, recognizing that public spaces must work for people with different identities, needs, and experiences. We took a really intersectional approach, guiding improvements to accessibility, safety, and comfort. Lighting strategies improve visibility and perceptions of safety, responding directly to concerns raised by women and girls. Step-free routes and generous circulation supported mobility for all users, while accessible toilets extended inclusivity beyond minimum compliance. Seating and planting encouraged people to linger, supporting the intergenerational use through the day. Public art and visual identity elements embedded representation directly into the environment. You'll see some more of that soon. And the space now actively brings people together. It supports interaction between communities who previously shared proximity, but not always space. For example, there's an elderly residence, the elderly residents of the sheltered, of the neighboring sheltered accommodation block that borders the square. They now meet within the square with new residents who are attracted to specialist markets that can now happen on key days. And I would say that the social impact of the project goes beyond trade to celebrate the site's rich culture and amplifies the identity or the identities already present at Queen's Market through materials and motifs and iconography and colors and textures that reflect the vibrancy of the place, the goods on display, and most importantly, the people who make the market special. And on this page, you can see some of our references at the top and how this has kind of been translated into the identity and the design below. We sought to deliver value throughout the process, not just on completion. Paid collaborations with local artists and young people and creatives embedded poetry, graphics, storytelling into seating and signage and landscape features, foregrounding community narratives whilst also supporting local community wealth building principles. And the spaces now support everyday encounters, family gatherings, traders, sharing meals and community events alongside commerce, strengthening social connection, encouraging dwell time and reinforcing a sense of shared belonging. Environmental performance was integrated into both infrastructure and experience. Areas of hard surfacing were replaced with planting trees and rain gardens that enhanced biodiversity and softened the urban environment. Sustainable urban drainage systems naturally manage rainfall, reducing flood risk and improving climate resilience. Timber glulam canopy structures apply low carbon construction principles while providing adaptable long-term infrastructure. And these strategies were designed not only to address climate challenges, but to create healthier conditions in which communities can thrive. Shade, greenery, seating, improve comfort and well-being, encouraging longer stays, improve lighting and clear routes, promote walking and cycling, and supporting active travel. Importantly, these improvements are measurable. Over 2,250 square meters of public realm have been upgraded, transforming fragmented space into accessible civic infrastructure. The project introduced 180 square meters of new green space and planted 6 new trees, improving biodiversity and urban cooling. 120 square meters of SUDS incorporates subterranean storage capable of holding approximately 7,200 liters of water during heavy rainfall events, significantly reducing the strain on local drainage systems and mitigating flood risk. Queen's Market is a vital economic resource. It always has been, and the project boldly announces its presence whilst quietly strengthening its long-term resilience. Improved infrastructure supports traders in adapting to changing high street conditions whilst enabling new forms of activity and programming. Flexible power, lighting, and spatial arrangements allow events to test trading opportunities, helping local businesses experiment and grow. Gateway signage and branding and improved visibility attracts new visitors while supporting existing traders. Measured outcomes included 4 jobs created or safeguarded and 7 previously vacant units returning to active use. The market continues to provide affordable goods essential to low-income households. And by investing in public spaces and as economic infrastructure, the project supports a thriving local economy rooted in community well-being and demonstrates the enduring value of multifaceted and, importantly, dexterous trading spaces within the city. So this is our final slide, and I want to say that the project as a whole demonstrates how public space can contribute meaningfully to urban life by creating conditions in which people can once dwell, live, work, connect, learn, and play. Through co-design, inclusive infrastructure, and sustainable interventions, the project enables communities and local economies to thrive together. The interventions deliver high-quality contribution to a historically unloved part of London, safeguards a historic local landmark while supporting future adaptability and the transition towards resilient, low-carbon streets. Environmental strategies address climate and biodiversity challenges, while social improvements enhance safety, accessibility, and belonging. And most importantly, the project reflects the community that shapes it. Queen's Market is not a new destination imposed through design, but an everyday place made more welcoming, inclusive, and sustainable through collective effort, and a public space where urban life can continue to grow and thrive. Thank you very much.
Wow, and absolutely bang on the time. That's quite incredible. I imagine that you need to have some of your tea now. So we're bringing the judges back to ask the questions, and I have Sarah up first, please.
Yeah, no, amazing project. And you talked about the engagement side of things, but how have you reflected that diverse community in the final design?
Yeah, well, I can't flip between slides, so maybe I can just kind of reference them as well. I think generally all projects that we work on need to be supportive and resonant. And I think supportive it takes the form of kind of an infrastructural approach, right? Like we need to encourage and support the lives that take place. But the resonance really speaks to people being able to see their lives reflected in the kind of built environment. It's a real mission of the studio, and it's something we seek to kind of impart in all of our projects. I think that is, to do that, it needs to be founded on the basis of deep listening. You know, like we really need to be it needs to be founded on the place, on an ambition with regards to care. It needs to be about being in the place for a long time. And that's how we shaped our co-design process. So we had two strands. They had, the community had a series of kind of advocates. So there was a traders advocate, there was kind of a visitor advocate, there was a management advocate. They formed a steering group. We didn't necessarily feel like it was right for that steering group to be making decisions. So what we did is we met with that steering group to co-design the co-design. So we would put proposals on the table, and then they would give us advice as to when should we be meeting. Maybe we needed more events. Maybe we needed events targeted towards us. Maybe we needed to have them on this time, at this day, at different moments. And so that led to our co-design program called Talking Shop. We led at least 4 or 5 different key events over the period, but we also had an ongoing presence in the market itself. And so we really kind of took inspiration. We took inspiration from how people gathered and the types of events that they wanted to hold. So for example, to answer your question directly, the square has been kind of organized in such a way. Yes, it deals with the infrastructure below ground, etc. And we put kind of green in where we can, but we've tested different modes. It can host markets. It extends the market trade outside of the market area to the public square. It can host dinners, smaller gatherings. It can host gatherings that are to be kind of curated by the nearby Wellbeing Hub, which is just about to open. And it can host kind of wider performative events that the borough put on themselves. But then there were kind of like motifs that people felt really kind of drawn to. And this goes back to the idea of resonance. Like there were kind of the floor and tapestry of the public realm is inspired by the carom board games that kind of the residents brought to some of our kind of workshop days. You know, this kind of rich, beautiful tapestry of these deep creams and these blacks and these reds. That's the idea of resonance. And then, you know, we landed on this kind of like frieze, if you like, which is this kind of bold announcement of the market. And that's really inspired by the kind of jewelry that takes place inside as well. So we're drawing kind of formal reference, but we're also kind of drawing kind of like use type reference, even the kind of signage. We had a kind of whole graphic kind of exploration of the amazing signs that take place. And then we've given the market a whole new identity, which we haven't kind of presented here, but it has a whole graphic identity kind of infrastructure governing kind of any improvements that take place from now onwards.
Can I jump in there?
Sure.
You can.
And just a kind of example of a literal translation. Part of the co-design sessions, we ran these painting sessions where we did Rangoli patterns on the floor. And so there was lots of conversations about color use and literal pattern making. And so lots of that was then translated directly into the color palette that we chose. And Jayden mentioned the signage and the motifs. And so it really felt, it was like a really success for us, where we saw, you know, co-design actions and people really being creative and imagining an amazing space and imagining what Queen's Market could be, and then how we kind of translate that into literal design.
Thanks, Alice.
Yep.
David, you're next up for a question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Enjoyed that presentation. I enjoyed the scheme. It's very interesting seeing this project presented after Rochdale Town Hall, where there was a very clear decision to keep everything super duper simple in the spirit of longevity. I won't comment upon that. The question is, do you think this space will last a long time? Do you think the process you've followed and the design you've come up with is resilient, or is it so expressive that it ends up being a moment in time and may not last so well? It's not a trick question. It's simply we're a jury going from one to the next. So I've heard the designer talk about simplicity. This is right at the other end of it. So you don't have to be defensive. I'm just intrigued how you might respond, please.
Thanks, David. All right, cool. I'll try and answer that one, and then maybe Alice can chip in. The first thing to say is that I don't believe, you know, it's kind of a belief, it comes from a position. Like, I don't believe that hard working spaces need to lack by default beauty or care or design input. You know, like our studio operates in these kind of dual spaces between kind of community and culture. And this project was developed at the same time in which we were developing key spaces and key projects for the V&A. You know, our ambition is to bring some of the design quality and the design quality thinking that would exist in South Ken to East London. But our ambition is to do that in a way that is inherently robust, right? You know, if you think about, yes, at some point in the market, you know, you see that one of the interventions is this kind of gold flashy signage, right? Like, we know how local authorities need signage, but it's deeply, deeply practical, right? If we talk about resilience and robustness, the market needs to announce itself on the high street. It needs something like that. The other interventions are incredibly hard wearing. You know, we have the pattern for the square is made out of standard blocks. We choose 3 colors. It's holding up pretty well. The other interventions are similarly hard wearing. You know, they extend to new power, new lighting, new toilet facilities as well. So I suppose an answer to your question is robustness and resilience was always a kind of a driver, I think, in any kind of public project, especially one with the scrutiny of kind of a London borough and the GLA. But I don't think that kind of ambition to robustness needs to means that you kind of disregard an ambition when it comes to delivering good design or rich design in a space that historically has a history of rich design.
Thank you.
Speaking of interventions, I know, Alice, you probably wanted to come in on that one, but if I can let Bridget ask her question and then hopefully we'll find a way.
Okay. Yeah.
I just don't want to leave all the judges without a question. So,
sure.
Bridget.
Yeah, thanks so much for your presentation. It really is a joy to hear about the care and attention that you've given to the engagement and co-design process. So, you know, congratulations to that. And it really came through in the way you presented, and also the kind of really unique quality of the detailing that's come out of that process. So, yeah. One thing that you did mention was that the traders were looking for improved lighting. And from what I understand, your intervention is like an addition on the front of the existing hall that still remains behind. Is that correct? And were you able to do anything with the lighting inside that dark space you showed in the first instance?
Yeah, maybe that's kind of a clarification, and Alice, maybe you can speak to the detail, and I'll just keep it short. But yeah. Our scope did extend inside the market as well. We did kind of quite unglamorous stuff, you know, like the market suffered from pigeons. Like, we recoated the entire roof in new pigeon mesh so that traders didn't have their goods spoiled. But we also worked with Naughty, our kind of lighting designers, to significantly increase the lux and performance of that space. Of course, when you look into the market from an external space, it still kind of reads relatively dark, but the space internally is kind of transformative. Look, Alice, do you want to say something about the details?
Yeah, so our scheme was inside the main big covered market as well. And part of what we did there was new lighting through the whole area. Obviously, this new metal pigeon mesh that Jayden talked about before. The new lighting there was a big study that we worked with Naughty, and we looked at the lux levels, and it was, you know, how to elevate and help the traders and display their goods in the best way that they could. In addition to this, we provided new public toilets, because there's never been public toilets here in the market, and offices for the market management team, storage, a cleaning cupboard, as I say, quite, as Jayden mentioned, quite unglamorous things. And that all existed in two shops that were side by side that have been vacant for years. So it was then kind of activating the facade of those shops. And so now within the market, it is lighter, there isn't pigeons in there, and there are no vacant shops, that has just energized the feeling, you know, of the whole space.
I just want to say one thing is just about that. Thanks, Alice. It's just really the project is a combination about kind of where we spend money, right? Like it's only kind of £1.6 million. So, you know, it's a combination of hardworking, more humble infrastructural adjustments, and then slightly more glossy moments as well, which maybe is a bridge between your question and David's question as well.
Thank you so much. As ever, there's just so much we can fit into this, but that's our 10 minutes. So
thank you.
Appreciate the presentation, and thank you so much. So next one up, Horatio's Garden, Sheffield and East. Sheffield for Horatio's Garden with Harris Bug Studios, RLX and Gleeds. I suppose I should just speak to the fact that I'm not biased in any way. So please kick off.
Hi everyone, can you all hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can see you.
Good, brilliant. Thanks very much. Thanks judges, and thanks everyone dialing in to listen and watch. I'm Charlotte Harris from Harris Bug Studio, and I'm here with Pete Reed, OBE. Pete is a Royal Navy veteran, 3-time Olympic gold medalist and ambassador for Horatio's Garden. And we decided to present this together because really we feel this project makes full sense when design expertise and lived experience sit side by side, because co-design really was at the heart of this project. I'm just going to flip my slides, sorry. Oh, how do I get the next one? Here we go, sorry. And so we're here to talk about Horatio's Garden, Sheffield and East. It's a public space, but perhaps not in the way that many would use that term. This is a space designed for people like Pete, whose lives have just changed without any warning at all.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. 5 years ago, I was told that I would never walk again. And in that moment, the world doesn't just change physically, it shrinks. And spinal cord injury, I'm not trying to fearmonger, but it can happen to anyone at any time, at any age. And it's sudden and it's life-altering, and there's currently no cure. And you go from independence to dependence in a single conversation. And when that happens, the spaces around you matter more than you imagine.
So this garden sits within, I'm just going to flick back, sorry. This garden sits within the Northern General Hospital in Sheffield, which is the home to the UK's second largest spinal injuries unit in the country. What that means is it serves patients not only from Yorkshire, but right through the East Midlands down to East Anglia. And that means that family and friends are often many hours away. But patients themselves are resident here on shared wards for anything from 9 to 12 months. So for that time, this outdoor space becomes their everyday public realm, part of rehabilitation, part of daily life. But this space wasn't always a garden. It was this lovely car park full of hard standing, heat retaining asphalt. And really, I'd like to invite you to imagine that being your view every minute of every day for a year of your life. So we set out to transform that into something integral to care, not adjacent to it. We wanted to, sorry, they're going a bit faster. We wanted to make a space that works hard every day in all seasons for people at their most vulnerable.
Spinal injury wards are places of extraordinary medical expertise, but they're also crowded and noisy and clinical and intense, and privacy is very scarce. You're observed constantly, and even small decisions are taken away. So on the ward, the air carries the smells of bodily trauma, and you're navigating loss and fear and uncertainty, and all this whilst relearning how to sit and how to balance and how to transfer and even breathe differently. And when you're trying to process a life-changing injury, you also need somewhere where your body is not being managed or corrected. And this garden is not just escape, it's space. And it's space to choose sun or shade. It's space to sit with family or sit alone. It's space to make a private phone call and space to feel like yourself again. And those choices may sound small, but when so much has been taken away, they are everything, and they are how agency is rebuilt.
So before we even picked up a pencil, we worked directly for 9 months with patients, clinicians, nurses, estates team and volunteers. And we continued to check and refine that work throughout the entire process, because this was really not about designing for people, but co-designing with them. And we approached it as accessibility not being treated as a constraint to solve, but rather as a creative driver shaping every decision. And we're going to give you a couple of examples of that. The garden is intentionally designed as a woodland with that kind of layered woodland planting, because for many users, the garden, if you think about your experience, you're experiencing it from a bed looking up. So the canopy and the garden is overhead. We planted 34 trees in the space, and these provide dappled shade in, pretty tough urban microclimate. And that responded directly to patient requests and needs. And perhaps, Pete, you could share from your experience the relevance of that.
Yeah, people think spinal cord injury is just wheelchairs and not walking again, but many people with spinal cord injuries can't regulate body temperature. So we feel cold even when others are comfortable, and we can get dangerously hot very quickly. So shade here is not just aesthetic, it's essential. In hospitals, when you're on the ward, most surfaces are hard and wiped clean. And here in the garden, the bark of the thoughtfully positioned trees are within reach. And the stone cairns that we can see here, they sit close to the root as rhythmic markers made by local 5th generation stonemasons. So the garden has structure even in the depths of winter. This pod here, active design decisions were taken to clad the building like this pod in cedar shingles. So the materials feel warm and tactile and human up close, which is so important. And the water in the garden is set at the right height to touch, and you can hear it move, and you can see birds gather and bathe and drink. And these are details that don't just look beautiful, but they make the space usable and safe and dignified. The thing is, public realm is often judged by footfall and buzz, but for me and many other people like me, the real test is simpler. Is it safe? Can I get around without a battle? Can I stay without pain or panic or difficulty? And is there somewhere specifically designed for me to rest? And do I feel like I belong? So here at Horatio's Garden, Sheffield and East, the answer is an emphatic yes. It's a yes to safety and yes to comfort and yes to dignity. And that's what makes it not just a beautiful garden, but the benchmark for a public space.
So this is a visual of the garden, and the garden is structured around 3 interconnected spaces. Each one has been really carefully considered. We have to think about people accessing the garden 365 days of the year, and a diverse, climate resilient, nectar-rich planting that works throughout the year. But I'm just going to take you through a couple of the areas within the visual that we produced for the charity early on. Firstly, this is the Glade. It forms the social heart of the garden. This is a social building, a space for rehabilitation, gatherings, informal interactions, craft classes, barbecues, music, and last year was pretty much a constant sports hub with England doing so well. And that was pretty incredible. The charity talk a lot about how hard it is to get young men out into the garden, and that really created quite a buzz. This is the area, the Woodland Retreat, a slightly different character. So it offers enclosure and quiet, featuring that pod that Pete mentioned. You can just about see the form of it there, almost leaf form. And what we did was we tested whether beds could turn in that comfortably within it. And just allowing solo time. So that's used for things like calling your solicitor, hanging out with your family, having your nails done, all those things that perhaps you don't get privacy on the ward for. And this corner is called the Forager's Dell. It centres on a glasshouse we designed as accessible. There are movable planters. They're designed for the practical requirements of use by wheelchair users, edible planting. And this really does support a lot of occupational therapy, seed planting, cuttings, potting up, that sort of thing. And this garden very much, everyone involved in this garden really has left their mark, whether patients, nurses, doctors, contractors, plants people, fabricators. We took thumbprints in clay, like Sheffield's cutlery hallmarks, and we set them within the pod to give this visible record of shared ownership, shared community, and shared voices. And we also designed for life beyond handover, talking about community. There's a paid head gardener who leads year-round care with local volunteers supporting patients and day-to-day tending. So the garden very much deepens rather than fades. Now, we're careful not to claim well-being without evidence, and here the feedback is consistent and measurable. 92% of patients with access to Horatia's Garden say it provides distraction from pain. 99% say it helps them feel more connected to family and friends. 100% of people with spinal injury report it improving their well-being. And really importantly, for those amazing NHS staff, 93% report reduced stress, which supports morale and helps enhance patient care. Environmentally, over 1,300 square metres of hard standing have been replaced with planting. Canopy cover has increased by 34 trees. Biodiversity is strengthened. You can see with rich layered planting, including 5,000 perennials. You can see here an ecological feature of dead wood, and rainfall really managed on site, improving the local microclimate.
And just to finish off from me, beyond the numbers, what changes is the atmosphere. So you don't feel like you're in a managed facility. You feel like part of something alive. And the volunteers and gardeners are there out of choice, not obligation. And that really matters. It reminds you that you still belong to a wider world, even at the moment you feel most reduced and vulnerable. And this is really important. Just to finish from me, 25% of people in the UK, and that's 16.8 million people, live with a disability, and too often outdoor spaces and public realms are designed as if they only really need to work for the other 3/4. So public space shouldn't feel like a compromise, and this garden shows that accessibility does not have to be second best or simply a tick box of regulations. It can be calm, restorative and beautiful. And when designed from vulnerability outwards, we create places that are richer for everyone when it mattered most. And Horatia's Garden was the safe space I needed to make healthy choices in the life-defining moments.
So just really to close out, Horatia's Garden, Sheffield and East, we think offers a model for public space that is evidence-led, humane and enduring. Just also to really make the point that care is not a minority experience, that every single one of us will live and experience it as a carer, as cared for ourselves. And if a place can't hold us at our most vulnerable, it's not truly public. Designing for care is a choice about what kind of society we want to be, not special provision for a few, but what good public space looks like when you design from the point of greatest need outwards. So if public space is where society expresses its values, this garden asks, who do we choose to design for first? And as Pete says, by beginning with those at their most vulnerable, we create spaces that elevate us all. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your presentation. The judges are here, and I believe we're back to the beginning. So I think, Bridget, you're first.
Thanks so much for that presentation, and I was very lucky to be able to go and visit the garden for the panel. So yeah, and to experience it in winter, and I can comment that it is still very lovely, even in the winter. So I guess my question really is one that Sarah asked earlier, and it's a good one, I think. Is there anything now that the garden's been in use for some time and that you've been able to see how it operates, if there's anything that you would change or wish that you'd maybe done differently, anything that you've learned that might be applied in other spaces?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think if we'd been able to create, it's not a massive space, so you're juggling lots of requests, and this idea of shared space versus some private time is really important. And if we could have had perhaps a secondary pod in there or some more space around that's a bit more around private space, I think that's really valued by people.
Thanks very much. I wasn't expecting a quick answer, so I wasn't.
I can continue. If I mean, I'm sure there's lots of things that we can improve, and I think, but that's perhaps the big one.
That was brilliant. Thank you, Charlotte. That's all right.
Okay.
I'll move on to Sarah, and then if there's anything else you want to come back to, you can. Sarah.
Thank you. Amazing transformation from car park. So the garden was exhibited at Chelsea before you constructed it back in Sheffield. What did you learn from exhibiting, and how did it inform any changes to the design when you brought it back to Sheffield?
Yeah, actually, the two designs were developed totally in parallel, and actually everything that we started with Sheffield because everything had to be used. It was going to be used in Sheffield, and Chelsea was really a springboard to talk about how we can make places that are accessible to everyone and raise a sort of profile of the charity and a springboard for fundraising for it. So really, it was a microcosm of the space at Sheffield, and we asked patients what they thought we should prioritise within it, because a 10 by 20 metre show garden or 12 by 20 metre show garden doesn't allow you to share the full extent of what happens in that space. So that's how we prioritised it. So rather than sort of picking something up and placing it down, it started in Sheffield and sort of concertina down at Chelsea. Does that make sense? And I think I was listening to Jaden's point about how we make uncompromisingly exceptional spaces in the public realm. And I think for us, we really wanted to make something that didn't compromise on design quality. And by taking it to Chelsea, we could really share the work of the charity as well. So we can kind of elevate that conversation about not seeing accessibility as a constraint.
Thank you.
David.
Yep, I'm fine. Lovely project, beautiful place, and I'm definitely going to visit it next time I'm in Sheffield. Very inspiring. Yeah, you're the last presenters, so you've got that beautiful spot of being last. So great chance of doing well today because it's a beautiful project. You're completely and utterly different scheme to any of the things that we're about to spend 40 minutes vexed about. Every other scheme is much more significantly urban, much more significantly in regeneration areas, or transformed in frankly more standard public experiences. You said that at the start. But yet you finished with this idea of it becoming a model. So I'd like you to expand upon that really, because for me that's really important. We're about to go live with a project for the Institute of Cancer Research, which has similarly aspirational kind of thinking about therapy and therapeutic gardens and the harmony and the nobility and joy that it can provide. But I'd really like you to unpack the model for other spaces. Let's say we were city centre, Sheffield, right next door to the train station. Let's keep it to Sheffield, with all the fountains. Well, how would you relate this experience to that, please?
Okay, a couple of there's quite a few points there, but I will try not to
The
miss
model,
any,
the model,
David.
the model, the model's the most
I
important
think
one, the model.
I think firstly, healthcare is not just what happens in an operating theatre, and the Victorians knew this, right? The Victorians really, really understood this. They understood that access to nature, embedded as part of care and rehabilitation, not as a decorative function, had impact. And I think we are moving back to that space. We sort of lost it in the 60s and 70s and 80s potentially, and really understanding that it's not a nice to have, and that there are factual impacts on that actually impacts on a financial bottom line, which whether we might like it or not, how decisions are made in a cash-strapped NHS, that patients experience less pain and their stay is relatively shorter. So there's evidence work happening, and I think as we move towards, you know, things like other healthcare gardens kind of stepping up, that allows us to give that proof of delivery. I do take your point, and I did start with it, that other projects were kind of urban regeneration, more traditional public realm. I do think that this is a space defined by collective use and civic responsibility, and shares and sort of shows how shared infrastructure within a public healthcare system, when done well, can shift the dial. And then give examples and experiences of how we do that generally in our work. And I would say as a studio, our work has been more considered and thoughtful and developed since working with Horatio's Garden.
Have I got time to add something?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are still.
Yeah,
you're
I'm still
really
looking for
right.
the.
You've got
I'm
3
still
minutes
looking
left.
for the model. I'm still looking for the model. A little bit more specific. It's kind of really important in my opinion. Just I love the work and I love what you just said there, Charlotte. But I'm still looking for the model, please. What do you what how one? I'm a practitioner. I'm about to take on Whitechapel Market. Help me out. What am I doing? What am I learning, Pete?
Wait, sorry, you go first, Pete.
Oh, well, so because it's such a specific question, I'm not a designer. I'm one of the very lucky end users, and my only comment, the only part I can add.
That's good.
Okay, well, I'm one of thousands of end users that spent weeks and months in this garden at a really crucial time, and I think the richest and most tangible thing that I can add at this time is I'm sitting in my Magnolia Dream house. It's a fixer-upper, and we are currently designing our house and designing the garden, and I'm taking all the design inspiration from Horatio's garden to put into my own garden. So that doesn't answer your question, David, but I can't turn the camera around to show you what's outside, but it will be a mock-up of Horatio's garden as best as I possibly can here. Perhaps Charlotte can answer the model bit, but
yeah,
but me and
sorry,
thousands
Pete.
of other people are using it as a model for our own homes.
And I think the model is around dialogue, David, to be honest. And I think it's around meaningful dialogue. I don't think it's about, you know, tick box questionnaires. I think it is about not even starting with a preconception of what that space looks like before you understand what are the it's the small things that make a big difference, isn't it? So what are the day-to-day things that you experience? Raquel Signaporia, who was going to co-present, and Pete stepped into the breach when unfortunately she wasn't very well, so thank you, Pete. Worked with us a lot on this and talked to us a lot about how she was tipped out and hadn't had no sort of experience of navigating things like curbs, bumpy paths, paving joints, all those things. Understanding that a joint in a paving can cause agony is a really important part of that process. So having that really meaningful dialogue that is qualitative, not necessarily kind of quantitative, I would say.
Thank you.
And continuing to check that along as the process, not just having it in Rebus stage 2, but continuing to check that with people and have those conversations and being prepared to shift and move.
We have 30 seconds left, so if there's anything that you were wanting to say before that question that you want to leave us with, then you're welcome.
No, we're just very grateful to be able to, you know, share the project with you all, and that it has, you know, been recognised as a project. I really do want to thank patients and nursing staff. One of the doctors talked about how the garden is so powerful because the occupational health therapy and gym is available 9 to 5, and the garden is available 24 hours a day. And we don't just get better 9 to 5. So I guess it's also thinking about it as a permanent resource that people can draw on 365 days a year.
Thank you so much for your time, your presentations. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
So this concludes the presentations of the finalists in this category, and what a shortlist. There's a fair amount to think about. So the judges are now going to retire to make their deliberations. So that's all for us for now, but you can keep watching the pineapples. Check out the schedule button for everything that's on right now, or watch anything back. Thank you for presenting, engaging and caring on such an important category. We will see you soon.